Chapter 733. Xue Qianzhong was stunned, but the opponent pulled out a hairpin from her hair and rushed towards him. Her black hair swayed along with her body, drawing a beautiful arc in the air. But in the next second, she was in front of Xue Qianzhong. There's a move in the Gale sword art that you're practicing called Wind Equalizes Autumn. When you're defending, you like to quickly use Wind Equalizes Autumn after Wind Equalizes Autumn for sneak attacks. Xue Qianzhong's eyes widened. Because at this moment, he was using Wind Equalizes Autumn to defend, and subconsciously used Wind Equalizes Autumn. She even knew the name of his moves and habits. Gong Yimo squinted her eyes. At this moment, when you put your right hand back, your chest will be completely exposed. This is your biggest flaw. As she spoke, the hairpin in her hand stabbed towards the opponent's chest. But in her previous life, she did not go too far, but in this life, the hairpin was instantly sent to the opponent's chest. He did not know why when he died. Why? He took a few steps back, his plan was seen through, his martial arts was suppressed. It could be said that he was not as good as the opponent. But why did Gong Yimo know him so well? Gong Yimo's sigh dissipated in the wind. Once, you also knew me so well. Xue Qianzhong did not understand, he fell to the ground and breathed his last. Everyone was shocked, she killed him just like that. They did not get the antidote yet. Gong Yimo knelt down on one knee and took out the medicine bag from the opponent's arms. The antidote is here, I will ask you Qijuan to identify it and detoxify everyone, please be patient. Everyone trusted Gong Yimo blindly. Hearing this, they cheered subconsciously because they had not been detoxified. Soon, Longqing Wuji came back. Not only did he quell the riot, he also destroyed the sacred lake and released the original cultivators. When he found out that Gong Yimo had helped him quell the chaos, he did not have time to thank her. He hurriedly went to deal with the aftermath. Those who were poisoned needed to be detoxified, the commoners needed to be pacified, and there was also Dragon City's Tingxue. The palace needed to be tidied up. Gong Yimo went straight to the harem. She found that Si Wuyan had been knocked unconscious. Shuolian and the others were indeed nowhere to be found. Gong Dai had not returned yet. It was obvious that he had gone to chase after the culprits. However, the culprits were able to pick up the culprits despite her many layers of defenses. Gong Dai should be fine, right? She threw away those thoughts and helped Si Wuyan to the bed. When Si Wuyan woke up, he frowned and covered his head. Gong Yimo hurried forward. You're awake. Puzzled, she asked, do you remember anything? After all, if the other party could break through his defense, why didn't he take Si Wuyan away with him? Why did he only knock him out? Si Wuyan was relieved to see that it was Gong Yimo. He thought of something and suddenly grabbed her hand. The one who knocked me out was Shuolian. What? Gong Yimo was in disbelief. Si Wuyan nodded. Right now, Gong Dai is in danger. He did not guard against Shuolian. I'm afraid that she might plot against him. Hearing this, how could Gong Yimo sit still? She quickly handed a bag of medicine to Si Wuyan. Right now, many people in the city have been poisoned. The antidote is in this bag. After you find it, help Longqing Wuji. I'll go look for Gong Dai. Si Wuyan nodded. You're still pregnant. You have to be careful. Once Lu Ye's side is settled, Longqing Wuji and I will go help you. Gong Yimo nodded and immediately went out to look for him. However, in the vast grasslands, Gong Yimo had no idea where the culprits had escaped to or which direction they had gone. She pondered deeply. Finally, she decided on a direction and dashed after them. Gong Dai had killed several groups of people. At the same time, it proved that he was chasing in the right direction. However, why did Shuolian do this? When he had rushed to the palace, Shulian had already disappeared. He had thought that someone had captured her. However, when he thought about it carefully, he realized that something was wrong. There were no traces of a fight. Si Wuyen had only been knocked unconscious. This meant that Shulian had left on her own accord. Because of the royal sister, the people in Lu Ye's palace were very respectful toward Shulian. They were ordered to guard Shulian. However, they did not restrict Shulian's movements. Therefore, Shulian had first stolen the poison from Si Wuyen. Then, she took the opportunity to knock out the guards and escape. She had left the palace and the city very smoothly. Because of her respect towards the royal sister and Longqing Wuji's trust towards the royal sister, she did not encounter too many obstacles when she took the royal sister's token. When Gong Dai was chasing after her, he had asked the people guarding the city. The answer he received was the same as what he had guessed. In order to prevent others from catching up, the other party would definitely change lanes. The reason why he had chased in this direction was also a guess. He did not expect that he had guessed correctly. The reason why Shulian did this must be related to Fuya. Something must have happened to Fuya. The other party had sent a messenger pigeon to her and ordered her to do this. With Shulian's feelings towards Fuya, it was normal for her to be so obedient. Therefore, the direction he was chasing in was the direction towards the Lotus Country. Lu Ye's palace was tidied up within 2 hours. Longqing Wuji was swift and decisive. With Si Wuyen's help, the poisoned people in the city were all treated. Those who should be sent to prison were sent to prison, and those who should be comforted were comforted. However, when facing Longqing Ting Shui, the old princess consort, and the old king Lu Yi who was clearly delirious, his expression was somewhat conflicted. These people had been his family for the past 20 years or so, but now, he did not know how to deal with them. Especially Longqing Ting Shui. When he thought of how he had always doted on her, but she had turned into such a hateful person, it made his heart turn cold. Longqing Ting Shui knelt at Longqing Wuji's feet and begged. Brother! Brother, don't kill me. I was forced. Longqing Wuji was now annoyed when he saw her. He moved his feet and broke free from her hands. His dark blue eyes were filled with disgust. You were forced to kill your own husband? You were forced to poison the people of the imperial city. You were forced to collude with the ministers and climb into their beds. This prince is very happy to see you screaming so happily. Once he thought of what Longqing Ting Shui did in the palace, he felt disgusted. He did not look at her again and turned to sit on the throne. Pass down this king's order. Father, Princess Consort is old and needs to rest. Send her to the sacred lake to cultivate. Longqing Ting Shui. He paused, send her to be a horse slave. Longqing Ting Shui screamed when she heard this. Brother! You can't do this to me. Those horse slaves are ugly and smelly. If you send me there, they won't let me go. Longqing Wuji's heart softened when he heard her words, but when he thought of how his good sister wanted him dead and wanted to kill him to replace him, his heart hardened. Didn't you say you can't leave men? This king thinks that place is very suitable for you. His blue eyes flashed with murderous intent, which made people shudder. Longqing Ting Shui screamed as she was dragged away. She thought she could ascend the throne, find a chance to poison Gong Dai, and kill Gong Yimo. She did not think that the final result would be worse than staying in that small country. At least, she would not be so miserable. Chapter 734. Gong Dai followed the road and quickly found the carriage. He flew in front of the carriage and blocked the path of the group of people. Seeing Gong Dai catch up so quickly, they were shocked. The leader of the masked men said fiercely, Shuo Lian is in our hands. If you don't move, don't blame us for being ruthless. As he said that, the curtain of the carriage behind him was lifted, revealing Shuel Yen's frightened face. Someone was holding her hostage with a knife. Gong Dai acted as if he didn't hear anything. He walked closer step by step. The wind raised his silver-gray hair, and his handsome face was as cold as ice. Seeing him approaching, the killers rushed over one by one, but Gong Dai didn't move. Instead, they died as soon as they got close to him. Just like this, he killed one person with each step. He didn't stop walking towards the carriage. From the time we were intercepted until now, this king has killed 171 of you. Gong Dai sneered, if you dare to kill her, why do you have to do it at all costs? Hand her over. He killed as he spoke. Seeing that the people surrounding the carriage were about to be killed by him, the leader was sweating profusely. Finally, he said fiercely to Shuel Yen. If you don't get there today, you can wait to collect your husband's corpse. Your blood is precious, but he is just an ordinary person. If he dies, then he dies. When Shuel Yen heard this, she didn't care about being afraid. She walked out of the carriage and stopped Gong Dai. Prince, don't kill. They captured my husband. I must go back. Gong Dai finally stopped. He looked at the woman in front of him and frowned. Royal sister wants me to bring you to see her. Shuel Yen shook her head with tears, no. These people, they are all death warriors. If I don't get back in time, they will kill my husband, they will really kill him. As she spoke, Shuel Yen took out a small cloth bag from her bosom with tears streaming down her face. Inside was a severed finger with a small old scar on it. She recognized that it was her husband's finger. Gong Dai pursed his lips. The men of sacrifice tensed up and said, if Prince wants to follow us, then we can only stay here and wait for Fuya to be killed. In any case, for the sake of the great cause, I will wait until my death. Gong Ju glanced at him coldly, then shook his head and repeated his words. Royal sister wants me to bring you back. With this sentence, it meant that no matter what happened to Fuya, he had to bring Shuel Yen back. That was because the Snow Lotus would be fine with them. However, if it were to fall into the hands of those people, it would most likely become a drug tester. After Gong Dai finished speaking, he reached out to knock Shuel Yen unconscious. But just as he reached out, Shuel Yen suddenly lowered her body and knelt down in front of Gong Dai. In a moment of desperation, she really couldn't think of any other way, so she could only beg him. Your Highness. I must leave today. My husband treats me extremely well. He understands me, dotes on me, loves me, and cherishes me. And I'm not afraid of death for him. Please grant my wish, Your Highness. Gong Dai looked down from above, listening to Shuel Yen's cries of blood, but he was not moved at all. Until Shuel Yen suddenly raised her head and looked straight at him. If it was Immerse who was captured today, you would also do the same, right? Gong Dai was stunned. Shuel Yen used the back of her hand to fiercely wipe away her tears. When you love someone to the extreme, how could you still care about your own life? Once I leave, just let Immerse think that I'm dead. But even if I have to risk my life, I still want to see him and die in front of him. Gong Dai, if you put yourself in my shoes, you would also do the same, right? Since that's the case, please don't stop me. Gong Dai finally revealed an awkward expression. If he put himself in Shuel Yen's shoes, even if he was forced to stay, he would still think of a way to escape. Since that was the case, there was no point in staying. In the mountain stream, because Gong Dai was silent, no one dared to speak. They all waited for his decision. Finally, Gong Dai softly said, "You can leave." He suddenly flung his sleeves and left. Rather than keeping her here, he might as well go back and send troops to attack the Lotus Kingdom. As for the result, it was all his own choice. In the end, he could only bear it. Shuai Lian almost cried tears of joy. She quickly mounted her horse and urged the other party to leave quickly. However, the leader was still tense. Prince Regent, we'll meet again someday. As she spoke, she quickly left with her men, afraid that Gong Dai would go back on his words. Gong Dai frowned. He had some guesses in his heart. Gong Yimo rushed over at this time. She saw Gong Dai standing alone on the mountain stream path. It was like an otherworldly story, a thick and heavy brush stroke. Are you all right? Seeing that he was fine, Gong Yimo was happier than anything else. She threw herself into Gong Dai's arms like a swallow returning to the forest. She had thought of many possibilities on the way here. Seeing that he was fine, she could finally relax a little. Gong Yimo was rarely so enthusiastic. Gong Dai quickly hugged her and couldn't help but chuckle. Royal sister, you're pregnant. You can't be so reckless in the future. Gong Yimo rubbed against his chest. When I think that mother might do something to you, I'm so scared. Gong Dai, it's best that you're fine. Gong Ju's heart was moved. He held her hand tightly, and then whispered to her about what happened just now. Gong Yimo whispered, I guessed so too. The other party used a messenger pigeon to threaten her. I was careless. Gong Dai stroked her hair. No, royal sister is the smartest. You knew where I was in an instant. Gong Yimo was embarrassed by his praise. She rubbed against him and sighed. Since mother made such a choice, we can't do anything about it. I'm just afraid that he'll be used by those crazy people to test medicine. He'll be better off dead. We have to make plans early. Gong Dai nodded. There's no hurry. Yuheng and Lu Ye's Snow clan members have all been killed. After we return, we can directly send troops to the Lotus Country. Gong Yimo frowned. We still have people in the Lotus Country, but they didn't send any strange news. It's very likely that the Lotus Country didn't encounter any war. Fuya might have been captured outside the Lotus Country. Gong Dai sighed. If that's the case, then it's good. Gong Yimo hugged him for a long time before reluctantly letting go. Lu Yi should be crowning himself emperor soon. So, you go back and make arrangements first. Si Wuyen and I will go back after the ceremony. Gong Dai also knew that this was not the time to be romantically involved. Royal sister stayed behind because she was afraid that there would be some fish that escaped the net. However, the other party's strength was greatly damaged this time. Presumably, next time, they would be able to completely eliminate those crazy Snow clan members. Okay, I'll go back first. Royal sister, you must be careful. His ink-like eyes were filled with Gong Yimo. That cold and handsome face had a trace of helplessness. If I want to marry you, I really need to pass through 5 trials and kill 6 generals. But because it's you, I'm not afraid of any difficulties. Gong Yimo laughed. Why are you suddenly so emotional? We're going to meet very soon. You make it sound like we're going to part forever. Gong Dai kissed her forehead and said quietly, I just don't want us to encounter something like Snow Lotus. Chapter 735. Gong Yimo shook her head. No, I'm not her, and you're not Fuya. If it were me, I'd definitely save you. Gong Dai couldn't help but laugh. I'd definitely save you too. What joy was there in life, and what bitterness was there in death? Nothing could separate them, not even life and death. Let's go back. Gong Dai decided to go to Yuheng now and bring people back to deploy. He wanted to catch all these rats that had been forced to the edge. If his royal sister wanted peace, he would get rid of all the hidden dangers for her. If his royal sister wanted prosperity, he would give her endless support. He only hoped that after the country was prosperous and the people were at peace, they would be able to live happily together and never have to worry again. Gong Yimo nodded. Go. I'll watch you leave. Gong Dai pinched her nose. I'll watch you leave. He was the one who had watched her leave the entire time. She had dreams, things that she always wanted to do, and beliefs that she worked hard for. However, he only believed in her. Frankly speaking, Gong Dai had always done more for this relationship. Gong Yimo secretly decided that after this matter was over, she would accompany him and never be separated again. They would go sightseeing and enjoy life. She would accompany him for the rest of her life. Thinking of this, she bit his lips and clenched her fists to cheer him on. When husband and wife are of one heart, their sharpness can cut through metal. Those small fries will all die under our brilliance. Gong Dai was amused by her little appearance. His royal sister never knew fatigue, would not be defeated, and would not regret or be discouraged. Go back to Dai Yu State as soon as possible. Okay. After walking far away, Gong Yimo couldn't help but turn back. Even though she couldn't see Gong Dai's appearance, she knew that he was still looking at her. She didn't know what would happen to Shuoyan and Fuya in the end, but she and Gong Dai would be fine. By the time they reached Luyi, the martial law in Royal City had already been lifted. Si Wuyen gave the seeds of the cattail wave grass to Dragon City Limitless, allowing him to hang them everywhere in the city. This way, even if there were still survivors who wanted to let the goo poison wreak havoc, they would not be able to control those who were poisoned, so there was nothing to be afraid of. This time, all the snow clansmen hiding in the Holy Lake were eradicated. Dragon City Wuji had solved a big problem, so even though he was very busy, he was still in high spirits. After the change in the imperial court, Gong Yimo suggested to proclaim himself emperor before the end of the year. After all, Luyi was a big country. Once he declared himself the emperor, the various forces in the country would have to learn to submit. At that time, Luyi would no longer be in a state of disunity. Instead, he would be on the right track, just like the other three countries. Longqing Wuji agreed and immediately went to do it. While Dragon City Wuji was preparing for the proclamation ceremony, Si Wuyan said to Gong Yimo, I remember that Luyi has a very powerful doctor. When I was young, I met him once, but because his medicine was very barbaric, Dong Wani did not like it, so we did not have any contact. But Dong Wani once said that he was a rare genius in the world. If you are interested, why don't we go and talk to him about the goo poison? Maybe he will have some ideas. When Gong Yimo heard that there was such a person, she did not delay and immediately asked Si Wuyan to bring her to see him. Thus, the two of them temporarily bid farewell to Longqing Wuji. Longqing Wuji said that now that Luyi had just settled down, he wanted to send a group of people to protect them. Gong Yimo could not refuse, so she brought them along. The group walked for an entire day and finally stopped at a place full of Gobi Desert. This place was far from water and not even a blade of grass grew. Could there really be a living person here? Si Wuyan said, I won't remember wrongly. He lives here. There is a house in the depths of the Gobi Desert. He has lived here for over 30 years. Gong Yimo nodded and let the people behind her search. Sure enough, they found a small house that was on the verge of collapse. But when Gong Yimo walked in, she found that the house was already empty. Looking at the degree of dust accumulation, no one had lived here for at least half a year. Si Wuyan still felt that it was strange, but Gong Yimo shook her head. It seems that those people were one step ahead of us. Since we thought of looking for him, those people who have been hiding in Luyi for many years would naturally not let him go. It's a pity that I killed Dong Wani too quickly. Otherwise, I might have been able to get some information. It's useless. It's good enough that that woman didn't lead you into a ditch. You still want her to help you, Si Wuyan sneered and shook his head. Without any results, they decided to go back home. But when they entered King's City, a large group of horses came out and one of the people driving the horses suddenly rushed towards Gong Yimo. "Bitch! It's all your fault. It's all your fault." Gong Yimo lowered her head and saw Long Qingting Shui rushing in front of her in a sorry state. She really did not recognize her. She originally thought that Longqing Wuji would lock Long Qingting Shui up. She did not expect that he would give her such a heavy punishment. Before she could get close, she was stopped by someone. But she still cursed loudly, as if it was someone else's fault that she ended up in this state. Gong Yimo reined in her horse and looked down at her condescendingly. "If back then, when you were choosing a husband in front of the palace, you would not have ended up like this. If you had killed your husband and peacefully became the queen of a small country, you would not have ended up like this. A greedy snake tries to swallow an elephant. No matter how many times you do it, you will still harm others and yourself." After saying that, Gong Yimo did not care about how Long Qingting Shui felt after hearing it and entered the palace. But later, she heard that Long Qingting Shui died in the stable that night with her eyes wide open. She sighed faintly and ignored it. Touching her stomach, she felt that the child seemed to have grown a little bigger. She would give birth in 3.5 months. She did not expect that there would be a day when she would become a mother. To be honest, she was not ready yet. Longqing Wuji also heard the news of Long Qingting Shui's death. After a moment of silence, he ordered people to bury her in a thin coffin. Very quickly, it was time for Lu Ye's coronation ceremony. Lu Ye's power was very scattered and he had never been called emperor. Before this, Longqing Wuji had sent letters to the various tribes and families. If they came during the coronation ceremony, it meant that they were willing to submit, accept control, and accept the inheritance. If they did not come, they would be Longqing Wuji's enemy and they would have to bear the consequences themselves. Gong Yimo and Si Wuyan represented two different countries. As for Yuheng, Kim Yun could not come because of the chaos that had just happened, so he sent a minister over to congratulate them. On the day of the ceremony, when Gong Yimo arrived, Longqing Wuji was changing his clothes. That gorgeous black and gold dragon robe made him look even more noble and domineering. His slightly curly long hair was tied up with a crown. After changing into the emperor's attire, he looked much more reserved. That pair of beautiful blue eyes sparkled brightly, even more beautiful than the most beautiful gemstones. Gong Yimo said a little embarrassedly. "Today is your big day, so I did not prepare anything. Here, I guessed that you might need this." As she said that, she handed over something in her hand. Longqing Wuji waved his hand and the palace servants all retreated to the side. He slowly turned around. That dignified appearance was very different from his usual self. Chapter 736. What is this? Longqing Wuji did not stand on ceremony with her. He took it and opened it. The item inside made his pupils shrink. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. This item was only given by Gong Yimo. Only then would there be no problems. Gong Yimo giggled and said, "Since you are the emperor, how can you not have the imperial jade seal? Your imperial jade seal is no longer worthy of you. Previously, I heard that you were looking for a rare piece of jade. Coincidentally, I have one in my hands. This was given to me by my father in order to carve my personal seal. It is said that it came from the same raw stone as Dai Yu State's imperial jade seal. I felt that carving a personal seal was too wasteful. So, I decided to carve the imperial jade seal for you. Don't think that my skills are not good enough." Although she said that, she was just being humble. She raised her chin slightly. Obviously, she was very satisfied with this handicraft. The imperial jade seal was carved in the shape of two dragons playing with a pearl. The dragon heads were lifelike and the dragon's whiskers could be seen clearly. It could be said that Lu Yi did not have such a good carving master. Longqing Wuji was touched. This beautiful jade was flawless. Its priceless value was not the most important thing. The most important thing was her intentions. It was impossible to carve such an exquisite imperial jade seal in just half a month. It could be seen that she already knew that he would become the emperor one day and had already carved it. This kind of trust and importance could not be compared to anything else. Originally, Lu Yi did not care about those flashy things. However, with Longqing Wuji and this imperial jade seal, today's coronation ceremony was much more exquisite. Gong Yimo raised her head in anticipation, waiting for Longqing Wuji to praise her. Who knew that Longqing Wuji would not let go of the imperial jade seal? In the end, when he looked at her, his eyes darkened. He reached out and patted her head. "You are too considerate, N." And then Longqing Wuji took the imperial jade seal and left. I have been carving it for weeks. Isn't your reaction a little too cold? Gong Yimo angrily waited for the coronation ceremony to be held at the Divine Eagle Temple. She swept her gaze over the crowd, and from the number of people present, she knew that almost all of the leaders of the Lu Yi tribes had arrived. That was to be expected. Now that Dragons Limitless had eradicated the people from the sacred lake, he was the sole leader. Furthermore, he was the one who had given Lu Yi enough food to eat and clothes to wear in winter. This was only the first year, and it would only get better and better in the future. Who would reject such a person who had won the hearts of the people? He was born to lead Lu Yi and his people into a new era and a brand new future. On the high altar of the Divine Eagle Temple, Lu Yi's people had appointed a king here, dethroned a king, killed a villain, and elected a saintess. However, it had never been so lively before. It was clearly a cold winter day, but the bottom of the altar was filled with people. Lu Yi had just obtained a victory. Dragon City Everlasting had saved many people. It was the best time for him to ascend the throne. Dragon City Everlasting slowly walked over. When he recalled that Gong Yimo wanted him to ascend the throne at this time, he was shocked because he was not ready. However, it seemed like this was a good time. The weather today was not bad. The sun was out, and there was no wind. Although the sun had no temperature and could not melt the snow on the ground, it shone on the snow, making it look crystal clear. The air seemed to be flickering with silver light, and it was full of vitality. When Dragon City Everlasting appeared, many people exclaimed in surprise. This was because Lu Yi rarely had people who looked as exquisite as him. Lu Yi's people had always despised the Dai Yu State's people for their weak facial features, and the Dai Yu State's people also felt that Lu Yi was a group of boorish people who were uncivilized. However, Dragon City Everlasting was different. He was tall and had deep facial features. He had a pair of blue eyes that were deeper than the sky, but he was also very handsome. He was in line with the Dai Yu State's aesthetic standards. His words and actions were domineering and reserved, without a hint of roughness. He could be considered to have gathered the essence of both countries. Gong Yimo said seriously to Si Wuyan. At this time, they were sitting on the altar. Below them, there were countless tribe leaders and family leaders standing on both sides of the stairs. When Dragon City Everlasting slowly walked towards them, Gong Yimo gave an objective evaluation. Si Wuyan was a little jealous. You attended Kim Yun's ascension ceremony, and you also attended Dragon's Everlasting's coronation ceremony. However, you gave me a gift when I ascended the throne. You're really biased. Gong Yimo did not know whether to laugh or cry. You're still fussing about this. How about this, if you have any good news in the future, I will definitely be there. Si Wuyan was dressed in red. When he heard this, he covered his face with his sleeves and laughed coldly. "Princess, you must keep your word." Then, they stopped talking and watched Dragon City Everlasting complete the ceremony step by step. Lu Ye's people were simple and did not have too many formalities. However, they had their own customs. For example, worshipping the eagle god. This series of toasts and congratulatory words had to be done by Dragon City Everlasting alone. However, there was a rather special and very exciting ceremony. It was Lu Ye's earliest founding king. When he built this altar, at the center of the altar, he used a huge rock to build a spire. At the top of the spire, there was a carving of an eagle god looking down on the earth. That eagle god's carving was very lifelike. Moreover, the stairs leading to it were very narrow and steep, only allowing one person to climb. At the heart of the eagle god, there was a groove that was said to be able to be lit. At that time, the founding king had set an iron law. That was that only Lu Yi, the first king to be crowned emperor, had the right to light the heart of the eagle god. Once it was lit, it meant that Lu Ye's fire of life was officially ignited, and a new chapter was opened. Therefore, when Dragon City Everlasting took the torch, he turned and looked at the eagle god's tower in front of him. He was a little nervous. Lighting it was the dream of every king of Lu Yi. However, no matter if it was in the past or now, he would be the only one who could do this. Thinking of this, he held the torch and did not directly climb the tower. Instead, he reached out to Gong Yimo who was beside him. Gong Yimo was looking up, waiting to witness this legendary moment. In her previous life, this eagle god's tower was destroyed before it could be lit. In this life, she really wanted to see if this eagle god's tower that was built a few hundred years ago could really be lit. It was said that this eagle god's tower was carved by Master Wu Wang a few hundred years ago. Once the heart was lit, it would not be extinguished. However, how could it not be extinguished? She was very curious. Therefore, when Dragon City Everlasting reached out to her, she was stunned. She and Si Wuyan had already given their blessings. However, Dragon City Everlasting grinned. "Didn't you say you were curious about the eagle god's heart? I'll bring you to light it." Gong Yimo was stunned. It was already inappropriate for her to sit here in place of Gong Dai, and now she was going to light the eagle god's tower with Dragon City Everlasting. Today was the day that Lu Yi established his country. It was not the same as the coronation. Moreover, if the rumors were correct, the eagle god's tower was destined to be lit only once. It was not good for a foreign princess like her to interfere in such an important matter, right? The ministers and tribal leaders were shocked and they saw this and started to discuss. Dragon City Everlasting saw Gong Yimo shaking her head when she heard the commotion, so he lost his patience and directly pulled her up by her hand. Chapter 737. Si Wuyan sat at the side and watched the commotion. He even thought that it would be great if Gong Dai was here today. Gong Yimo was pulled to the bottom of the eagle pagoda by him. The tall eagle pagoda cast a shadow over them. The discussions below became louder and louder. Most of them came from afar and did not know Gong Yimo. Seeing the newly crowned Emperor Lu Yi bring a woman forward, they subconsciously thought that it might be the Empress. But she was pregnant. Today is the day that Lu Yi proclaims himself as emperor. But on this day, I hope that you will remember me, Long Chengweji. More importantly, I hope that you will remember a person from Daiyu State who has made great contributions to Lu Yi. Long Chengweji's voice spread far and wide with his inner strength. Everyone knew who this woman was and their gazes became fervent. Gong Yimo heard such public praise in front of everyone and felt embarrassed for the first time. She wanted to retract her hand, but Long Chengweji held it tightly. He laughed loudly. His laughter was so bright that even the sun in the sky paled in comparison. "What are you afraid of? Lu Yi is a country on horseback. The people here should say out loud that they like and respect him. Furthermore, Gong Dai was not here. If they did not say it now, they would not have the chance to say it again. He laughed bitterly and continued to speak to the crowd. It's her. She solved Lu Ye's food shortage problem. She stopped Lu Ye from having to live in the cold winter without food. It's her. She broke through the barriers between countries. The Three Kingdoms horse ranch was built in a year. Everyone could wear the silk from Daiyu State, use the steel from Yuheng, and eat Yuchi's salt. Dragon City Everlasting's words caused everyone present to fall silent. They were grateful to Gong Yimo, but this was the first time they knew clearly what kind of contributions this woman had made for Lu Yi. In that frail body, there lived a powerful soul. Longqing Wuji paused and continued, she gave us land, a fixed home, and a city. That's why we have our current country. She was also the one who strongly advocated for the Four Nations Treaty, allowing us to become wealthy and be able to buy and sell goods instead of risking our lives to rob others. She was the one who had helped Lu Yi break the conspiracy at the Sacred Lake and saved the people of the royal city from disaster. It could be said that it was inevitable that Lu Yi would be able to establish a country. But without her, this day would have been pushed back by decades or even centuries. So today, I ask you to remember her name. What's her name? Gong Yimo. Cheers and shouts suddenly erupted from below. Everyone remembered her name, and their passion was ignited by Longqing Wuji's words. They shouted out with a voice full of gratitude and excitement. They were sincerely convinced by her. Longqing Wuji smiled and asked, "Who sent seeds, books, and teachers through the Three Kingdoms plank road?" What answered him was an earth-shattering response from the crowd. It's Gong Yimo. Who was the one who had finally made Lu Yi an emperor? It's Gong Yimo. Is she a warrior? Will you always remember her? Never dare to forget. The shouts that seemed to reach the heavens echoed in the air, making people's hearts surge. At that moment, Gong Yimo looked at the crowd below, and her heart ached. She almost cried. She really did it. She was not cursed by the people, but loved and respected by the people. They looked at her without hatred, and they were full of gratitude. The obsession that had been restraining her was broken. Her body and mind felt light, as if she had repaid her karma and was reborn again. Si Wuyan looked at the people below, their faces were all red, and their eyes were shining as they shouted. His heart seemed to be beating quickly in the cheers. Looking at Gong Yimo's side profile, he thought that he was the same as the people here. To her, never dare to forget. Longqing Wuji was very satisfied that his people did not embarrass him. He looked up and raised the torch in his hand. Let her light the Eagle Tower, do you have any objections? No. Let Gong Yimo light the Eagle Tower, she deserved it. Gong Yimo was trembling a little. Longqing Wuji had forced a torch into her hand. When she looked up, she saw Longqing Wuji smiling and wiping away her tears. Silly girl, why are you crying? Who was the one who patted her chest and told me that the four countries would trade together, 100 years of peace, and create a prosperous era? Where did the domineering attitude you had when you were drinking go? There are so many people here, aren't you ashamed? Gong Yimo smiled through her tears, and bowed to him gratefully. Thank you, Longqing Wuji, you are the one who made me. She said sincerely, and every word came from the bottom of her heart. Longqing Wuji's deep blue eyes looked at her quietly, and said in a deep voice. You are also the one who made me. At this moment, Si Wuyan shouted in a strange tone. Are you guys jealous? Are you still going to light the Eagle Tower? Gong Yimo glared at him, but Longqing Wuji laughed and pulled her hand. Let's go, I'll bring you to light the heart of the condor. Gong Yimo was touched. She didn't think that he would still remember when she said that she was interested in the heart of the condor. He didn't forget to satisfy her curiosity even during the coronation ceremony. The Eagle Tower was very steep, and since Gong Yimo was pregnant, Longqing Wuji walked in front, and then pulled her forward. Under everyone's gaze, they walked in front of the huge condor. The eagle was 4 meters tall, and its body was simple and unadorned. Looking at it up close, although the feathers of the stone sculpture were much less elegant, one could still see the exquisiteness of the past. At this moment, Longqing Wuji suddenly laughed. I suddenly feel that pulling you up was a very wise decision. I don't know if the old ancestor is purposely making things difficult for me, but the heart of the condor is more than 3 meters tall. How can I reach it alone? Gong Yimo didn't understand what he meant, but Longqing Wuji suddenly bent down and lifted her up like a child. What are you doing? She cried out softly, and when the people below saw this scene, their shouts almost overturned the entire Condor Plaza. Longqing Wuji had his back to the people, and didn't care about them. I asked you to light the fire. Do you see the heart of the condor? Can you reach it? Gong Yimo looked up at the huge eagle head. That pair of eagle eyes seemed to be made of obsidian, and clearly engraved her appearance. Nervousness, excitement, and joy. And not far above Gong Yimo, the chest of the stone sculpture of the condor was caved in, and there was some kind of fragrance coming from it. She didn't know if it could really be lit. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that she was sitting on Longqing Wuji's shoulder, and this position was too embarrassing. Gong Yimo carefully shifted. Longqing Wuji said mockingly. The eagle's foot is only 10 feet wide. Be careful, or if we all fall down, we will be recorded in the annals of history, and go down in infamy. When Gong Yimo heard this, she hurriedly stopped moving, and then, under everyone's gaze, placed the torch at the position of the heart of the condor. Chapter 738. Strangely, when the torch was brought forward, it was instantly lit. The heart of the divine eagle was burning. The flames danced in the divine eagle's obsidian eyes. At that moment, Gong Yimo thought that the eagle had come back to life. Longqing Wuji put Gong Yimo down. He had finally lit up the heart of the divine eagle and achieved his life's wish. From now on, he was the first person in Luyi, the first emperor. His heart was surging with emotions. He pulled Gong Yimo and turned around. His black robe fluttered, and his carefree voice spread in all directions with his inner energy. Luyi has claimed the country. He waved his hand, and everyone knelt down spontaneously. This was a moment that the commoners had been waiting for a long time. Quite a few elderly people even shed tears of joy. Longqing Wuji looked up to the sky and laughed. I, Longqing Wuji, am the first emperor of Luyi country. From today onwards, the country's calendar will be changed to the new era. I promise that within 100 years, Luyi will be free from war, and together with the other 3 countries, we will create a prosperous era. Si Wuyan stood up at the right time and shouted. Congratulations, Emperor Luyi. Yu Qi is willing to keep the promise of 100 years with Luyi, and create a prosperous era. Yu Hing's first prime minister also stood up. Congratulations, Emperor Luyi. Yu Hing is willing to keep the promise of 100 years with Luyi, and create a prosperous era. At this moment, Longqing Wuji looked at Gong Yimo. Gong Yimo smiled and bowed to him. Congratulations, Emperor Luyi. Dayu State is willing to keep the promise of 100 years with the other 3 countries, and create a prosperous era. The moment she finished speaking, tens of thousands of commoners cheered. Your Majesty, long live, long live, long live. The waves of cheers overlapped with each other. Finally, as if a switch had been flipped, Gong Yimo heard the sound of a mechanism behind her. A long eagle's cry was heard, covering the cheers of the commoners. Dragonching Wuji and Gong Yimo subconsciously turned around, only to see the stone eagle behind them move. The crouching insect's wings gradually lifted up. It raised its head and let out an eagle cry. Its wings spread out to a full 10 meters, reflecting the image of a huge winged figure below. Raising his head to look at the sky, the eagle soared into the sky. There was a fire burning in his chest, indicating that the Northern Overlord had awakened. The godly eagle has appeared. Someone exclaimed and then hurriedly kowtowed. This scene was beyond everyone's imagination. Gradually, more and more people shouted, "The godly eagle has shown its spirit, blessing Lu Yi." Gong Yimo was also stunned by the transformation of the condor in front of her. She did not even notice the dust falling on her body. On the other hand, Dragon City Wuji took a few steps down to avoid the danger of his image being destroyed. But Gong Yimo couldn't care less. She raised her head to look at the divine eagle, her heart filled with surprise. Such craftsmanship existed a few hundred years ago. It was simply heaven-defying. No wonder Great Master Wuang spent 10 years just for this moment. Would the heart of the divine eagle really never be extinguished? Would it continue to burn until the end of the country? But whether it would be extinguished or not was no longer important. What was important was that the crowning ceremony had been pushed to the extreme by the divine eagle's spreading wings. So much so that when Gong Yimo returned to her own country, she heard people spreading false rumors that the divine eagle had revived and flown away on the day Lu Yi was crowned. At this moment, Gong Yimo looked at the people below who were kowtowing. After a long time, she smiled lightly. She patted her stomach under the divine eagle's spreading wings and said proudly, "Son, did you hear that? Your mother is simply heaven-defying. These people are all kowtowing to me." Her son also kicked her excitedly. Gong Yimo was stunned, but her focus was clearly wrong. "You're making such a big fuss. Could it be that you're a daughter? How scary." She didn't know how to braid her hair. After the crowning ceremony, legislation, case filing, and the establishment of the government were all officially put on the agenda. The imperial examination system was indispensable. Education was the foundation of a country. Gong Yimo left behind some documents. After Si Wuyan imparted some of his experience, they prepared to leave for Dai Yu State. Now that the flourishing world was stable, as long as they got rid of all those evil people, they could be completely at ease. Longqing Wuji came to send Gong Yimo off. At this moment, he was the ruler of a country and had countless courtiers following behind him. Naturally, he couldn't say anything inappropriate. Gong Yimo directly returned the life token that he had given to her. Longqing Wuji should be the only person in Lu Yi who had 2 life tokens, right? Longqing Wuji stroked the life token that belonged to her in his hand and sighed in his heart. Why do you think there's no such thing as a perfect dual method in this world? In front of the city gates, he suddenly frowned and asked this question. Gong Yimo understood and looked up with a smile. Perhaps this is the interesting part of being human. If everything goes smoothly, there will be no sense of accomplishment. If everything goes according to your wishes, there will be no sense of happiness. She patted his shoulder and said seriously, "Although imperfection is also a kind of beauty, I still hope that you can be as perfect as possible. Don't let your friends miss you." Longqing Wuji lowered his head and thought about her words. Suddenly, he smiled. "You're always so good at comforting people." As he spoke, he looked into the distance. "Once you leave, the mountains are high and the rivers are far away. I'm afraid we won't meet again. You created the beginning of this flourishing world and made such great achievements. Where will you go in the end?" Gong Yimo touched her chin and sighed. "Now, I only hope that I can get rid of the remaining evil and have fun. Although the past 10 years were fulfilling, it was too rushed. I feel like I lost out. Longqing Wuji raised his eyebrows slightly. You mean, if I could do it all over again, it wouldn't be like this? Gong Yimo frowned and thought seriously. You're right. Seeing Longqing Wuji stare at her, Gong Yimo suddenly smiled. Why would I? If I could do it all over again, would still do the same. Because all of you are a very important and exciting part of my life. Longqing Wuji felt much better and said seriously, if you need Lu Ye's help, just let me know. Although I don't like Gong Dai, I'll listen to you. Gong Yimo nodded. Don't worry. When I go back, I'll definitely get rid of those people and return Flourishing World to its former glory. Longqing Wuji nodded and continued seriously, when you go back, work hard and have another daughter. Gong Yimo was a little confused. What do you want to do? Longqing Wuji raised his eyebrows. If I can't marry her mother, I'll let my son marry her daughter. That's a good idea. At this moment, Si Wuyan also joined in. Yeah, Gong Yimo, give birth to one for me too. But don't be like Gong Dai. My son doesn't like it if you're so cold. Gong Yimo puffed up her cheeks. Do you dare to say this in front of Gong Dai? Si Wuyan smirked. Isn't he not here? The few of them chatted and laughed. Even if they could see each other off for 1,000 miles, they would have to part in the end. Longqing Wuji chuckled. Everyone, take care. If there's a day when we meet again, we'll have a drink together. Si Wuyan cupped his hands. We'll part here. Gong Yimo sighed. You have to take care. At this time, Longqing Wuji suddenly grabbed her hand and quickly whispered in her ear. Remember, there's someone waiting for you in Lu Yi. Gong Yimo was stunned. Chapter 739. When they set off, Gong Yimo was still in a daze. Although she didn't want to, she still heard a lot of people, right? As the group moved forward, the sound of the flute was melodious. She realized that she couldn't be as carefree as before. It seemed that no matter how many times she experienced separation, she still couldn't get used to it. Gong Yimo couldn't help but turn around. She saw a tall man standing silently at the front of the group. He was playing the flute, his robes fluttering in the wind. He stood there like a pine tree with an unconcealable desolation. Goodbye, Longqing Wuji. Gong Yimo smiled and looked up at the sky. Now, she only hoped to return to Dai Yu State during the new year. At this moment, the atmosphere in Dai Yu State was tense. When Gong Cheng was in power, he tried his best to expel the Snow Clan. Therefore, Dai Yu State was the only country that didn't have a nest of the Snow Clan. But now, Gong Dai was worried that the remnants of the Snow Clan would take control of the Lotus Country. Therefore, he started to gather his troops and was ready to set off at any time. But he didn't expect that the other party would make a move before him. Almost at the same time that Gong Yimo left Lu Yi, the Lotus Country sent out their troops. They quickly attacked and occupied several small countries around them. Among those small countries, there were also countries that belonged to Yuheng and Lu Yi. This way, they could be considered to have declared war on 3 countries at the same time. When Yuheng found out about this, he was furious. He hadn't gone to find trouble with the Lotus Country, but a small country like the Lotus Country actually dared to find trouble with him. Therefore, Kim Yun didn't wait for the new year and directly sent troops to meet with the Dai Yu State. Lu Yi had just become the emperor, and someone dared to challenge his authority. Therefore, Longqing Wuji personally led the troops and planned to send troops to encircle and annihilate them. Just like that, the 3 sides sent out their troops, but in the same direction. When Gong Yimo received the news, she felt that the other party was courting death. She rubbed her chin and decided to change her route with Si Wuyan. Now that Gong Dai has also gone to the Lotus Country, if we go from here, we might be able to reach there before Gong Dai. Si Wuyan didn't care. Anyway, I'm here to have fun. Wherever you go, I'll go. Gong Yimo looked at him with disdain once again. Shang Mingxi is really pitiful. With a monarch like you, it seems like I should poach him over. Si Wuyan turned pale with fright. Don't dig it yourself. That guy will definitely follow you. Gong Yimo laughed. Let's see how you can slack off then. Gong Yimo, I won't blame you for being biased, okay? Si Wuyan flung his red sleeves, as if he had suffered a great loss. Gong Yimo sat on the horse and shook her head. No. He glared at Gong Yimo. I don't want you to give birth to a daughter for me. Is that okay? Gong Yimo glared back at him. You really dare to say that? Look. When this matter is over, I'll go and poach him. Si Wuyan gritted his teeth. You heartless ingrate. Gong Yimo was baffled. When have I been heartless? Si Wuyan clutched his chest and looked aggrieved. Not only have you let me down, but you're also going to provoke my Mingxi. Ah. Gong Yimo looked at him with disdain and urged the horse forward. Walking with you makes me feel like my IQ is being lowered. Without waiting for Si Wuyan to react to what IQ was, Gong Yimo rubbed her stomach again. It's fine if you lower mine, but it's not good if you lower my baby's, Gong Yimo. You bastard, if you have the guts, don't say things I don't understand. You can't even understand human language. As expected, I can't let the child near you. Let's forget about the godson. The two quarreled, but their speed was not slow. At this rate, they could really reach the Lotus Kingdom before Gong Dai. Although the war was about to start, Yu Heng and Lu Yi did not feel much pressure. How many people were there in the Lotus Kingdom? The three countries could easily annihilate the other side by sending out a few soldiers. On the other hand, Gong Dai guessed that the other side was stirring up trouble everywhere. In the Lotus Kingdom, the situation was tense with the war before them. Shuai Lian and Fu Ye were both under house arrest and could only move about in the Lotus Kingdom's palace. The two were not locked together and could only meet occasionally. Shuai Lian had a higher degree of freedom because there was a lunatic who wanted to use her blood for experiments. She was once again reduced to a drug tester, but because only her blood could be used, that lunatic was still polite to her. However, Fu Ye was much more miserable. The last time Shuai Lian saw him, he was tortured until he was covered in wounds, and she could not do anything. After another bowl of blood, Shuai Lian felt a little dizzy. That old lunatic saw her pale face and pursed his lips. He stuffed a pill into her mouth and said unhappily, "Women are just useless." Shuai Lian sneered and retorted, "Yes, you are useful. After tinkering with it for so long, you still can't do anything about the goo poison." That old lunatic hated it when people talked about his medical skills. He was so angry that he stomped his feet. His face was covered by his long hair and beard, and only his eyes were glaring fiercely at Shuai Lian. Who said I can't do anything? His words made Shuai Lian raise her eyebrows slightly. Who doesn't know how to boast? If you have a way, why are you still here? Crazy Ole said with a gloomy smile, pointing at the extraordinarily large cauldron on the side. If that person didn't forbid me from killing you, I would have refined you into a drug long ago. Why would I need to go through so much trouble? I should have refined you into a drug directly. His eyes burned as he stared at Shuai Lian. That cruel light caused Shuai Lian to take a step back. However, she heard him continue, "As long as I can refine you into medicine, I will definitely be able to replicate the antidote. Why would I need to seek something far away?" Shuai Lian's face turned even paler. "Since you are so powerful, why do you help the evildoer?" That old lunatic stared at her for a moment and finally looked away. "I'm just making an equal deal with him." He supports all my experiments, and I will refine the antidote on the premise that I don't kill you. Shui Lian's eyes lit up. So, if there are others who support you and help you, you can also betray them? That old lunatic frowned. When he was in Luyi, every time he went out to find something to eat, he was beaten and humiliated by people who called him a man-eating monster. Why did he become so popular after he came out? Just as he was about to say something, someone came to pick up Shui Lian, saying that the king had invited her. Shui Lian curled her lips coldly. Speaking of which, this new king had not been peaceful since he ascended the throne. However, she didn't know how he controlled a group of people. Anyone who disobeyed him would be poisoned and turned into a puppet, so that no one dared to resist. And she had probably guessed who this person was. Should she thank him for sparing her life? In the main hall of the palace, there was a dead silence. Today, the Lotus Kingdom had long lost its former peace and contentment. Only fear and trepidation remained. When Shui Lian strode in, she saw a person standing with his hands behind his back. From the back, he could be considered a handsome man. However, he turned around, and the long scar on his face made him look ferocious for no reason. Chapter 740. It really is you. Shui, what are you trying to do? Shui Lian stood 5 meters away from him and asked angrily. Shui glanced at her and sat down. He was very thin, as if he could be blown away by a gust of wind. Sister, long time no see. His voice was cold, and he was a man of few words. However, the affection in his eyes proved that he had never forgotten her. Hearing him call her sister, Shui Lian felt disgusted. No matter what you're trying to do, Fuya is innocent. He's not from the Shui clan. Let him go. When Shui heard this, it was as if he had heard a joke. He laughed deeply. If he dared to marry you, he should be prepared to die, you, sure. Shui put a finger to his lips. You'd better not say anything to anger me. Otherwise, next time, Fuya won't be missing a finger, but an arm. Shui Lian was so angry that her whole body trembled. However, in the end, she did not dare to provoke him anymore. Bastard, what do you want to do by calling me here? Shui narrowed his eyes at her. Nothing. I missed you so much. After not seeing you for so long, you haven't changed at all, you're still so beautiful, shut up. Shui Lian felt insulted and interrupted him. Now that most of Lotus Country was under his control, she knew that she could not fight against him. However, it did not matter. Mo would not let him do as he pleased. No matter how many poisons he had, he would not be a match for those big countries. She was waiting for the day when he would be utterly defeated. Thinking of this, Shui Lian turned around angrily. She didn't want to continue listening to his nonsense, but she didn't expect Shui to speak. However, Shui said softly, if I use you to capture Gong Yimo, do you think those people will dare to attack me? Shui Lian's pupils shrank as she looked at him in disbelief. Despicable. What do you want to do? Shui laughed. Lian, my good sister, don't you want to be the ruler of the world? Now that the world is at peace, we don't need to waste any effort to merge the 4 countries and create a prosperous world. When that time comes, I will be the king of the 4 countries, and you will be the queen. No, you won't succeed. Shui laughed coldly. That will depend on whether Gong Yimo listens or not. No. Mor will not be threatened by you. Shui chuckled. Of course I have the confidence to make her submit, but it's better to try peaceful means before resorting to force. As he spoke, his smile faded. Take her down. Shui Lian wanted to resist, but she heard the other party say coldly, disobedient. Should I chop off Fuya's hand for you to play with? With a single sentence, all of Shui Lian's strength was sucked away. She was taken away in a daze. Her heart was in turmoil, and she wished she could just die. As expected, Gong Yimo had arrived before Gong Dai and the rest. Now that the Lotus Kingdom's territory had expanded, Gong Yimo stopped at the border of Lu Ye's vassal kingdom. She said to Si Wuyan in puzzlement. Say, even if the other party annexed all the small kingdoms in this area, they would not be a match for the three of us. Moreover, we have a way to control the brain worm. Without those people with goo worms in their brains to accuse us, those who were poisoned would not be able to do anything. So why would the other party want to provoke the anger of the three kingdoms? Si Wuyan pursed his lips. There will always be people who refuse to give up and want to fight with all their might. Gong Yimo shook her head. Maybe it's not that simple. The other party might have a backup plan. Gong Yimo and the rest stayed in Lu Ye's vassal kingdom, Yi Kingdom. Unexpectedly, that night, the Lotus Kingdom actually launched an attack on the Yi Kingdom that Gong Yimo was in. The Yi Kingdom's territory was small, and there was only one city. So when the Lotus Kingdom attacked, Gong Yimo also heard the commotion. The king of the Yi Kingdom personally came to invite her. In his opinion, Gong Yimo was more capable than him. Si Wuyan also got up when he heard the commotion. Seeing that Gong Yimo was pregnant, he looked at the king of the Yi Kingdom with some displeasure. Then, he said to Gong Yimo. Why are you up? The left and right armies are almost here. They won't be able to do anything. Gong Yimo frowned. My mother is still in their hands. They came the moment we arrived today. Obviously, the other party is coming for me. Even if I don't show up, they will force me to. Gong Yimo's words made sense. Si Wuyan helped her up, and the two of them went out together. On top of the city gate, the other party was holding the line. However, they did not bring many people with them. Gong Yimo was even more certain of her judgment. The king of the Yi Kingdom shouted, Lu Ye's army is about to arrive. Are you still going to continue your deathbed struggle? Someone below took a step forward. I heard that the princess has come to visit. Please meet the princess. Gong Yimo saw that the other party went straight to the point and did not hesitate. She took a few steps forward. Speak. What else do you want to do before you die? The other party chuckled. We would like to invite the princess to the Lian Kingdom as a guest. What do you think? Gong Yimo smiled. Is this a threat? Soon, the other party pushed a woman forward. She looked up at Gong Yimo and smiled proudly. Yes, it is a threat. Shulian's mouth was gagged, but she did not seem to be blamed. It was obvious that the evil mastermind was really Shulian's brother. Because only he would not bear to do anything to Shulian. To be honest, we have already mastered the method of making the antidote. If the princess is not willing to go with us, this woman will be made into an elixir alive. Si Wuyan said in a low voice. It seems that the old lunatic is really in the other party's hands. He can make elixirs with a living person. Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes and did not speak. Seeing that Gong Yimo was hesitating, the other party removed the cloth gagged in Shulian's mouth. Shulian quickly cried out, "Amour. Don't worry about me. Now that I can die with my husband, I have no regrets." This was also the reason why she did not hesitate to kneel down and come back. She had no regrets to die with her husband. Gong Yimo knew that Shulian was prepared to die, but she was still hesitant. After all, she had the space. It was impossible for the other party to make her consume any kind of poison. Moreover, she was highly skilled in martial arts. No one was her match. But if she agreed, would the other party let Shulian go? Gong Yimo did not think so. Seeing that Gong Yimo was hesitating, Si Wuyan quickly said. You don't really want to go, do you? Can you not be silly? It's not enough to lose one person, you want to put yourself in danger. Have you forgotten that you are not alone now? You have another in your stomach. Gong Yimo subconsciously touched her stomach. That's right, she had a child. Seeing that Gong Yimo was still hesitating, the person below pulled the tied-up Shuoyan in front of him and threatened in a low voice, "You better be obedient. If you don't obediently bring Gong Yimo back, the king will torture Fuya to death. Have you forgotten the last time you saw his miserable state?" Chapter 741. Shuo Lian trembled. How could she forget? Fuya was injured all over and had been tortured to the point of unconsciousness. When she went to see him, he was so weak that he couldn't even say a word. Thinking of this, big drops of tears fell. It was fine if she died, but if she had to drag her daughter down with her, she really couldn't bring herself to do it. Mor. Don't worry about us. Mother has already decided to live and die with husband. It's just a pity that we can't see your child being born. That person saw that Shuo Lian was useless and threw her into the hands of his subordinates. Once again, he covered her mouth. Princess, have you thought it through? How about this, as long as Princess is willing to leave with us, we will give you Shuo Lian with both hands. Shuo Lian shook her head. No. She didn't want to leave her husband. Gong Yimo pursed her lips. At that moment, she really wanted to agree, but Si Wuyan quickly covered her mouth. Are you crazy? Have you forgotten how Shuo Lian escaped? Si Wuyan stared at her. This is obviously a trap. First, they will trick you into it and then use Shuo Lian's husband as bait to lure her back. The other party's scheme is so obvious and you still want to jump in. He was exasperated. Even if you have a life-saving trump card, how long can you last alone in the poison den? If you were to be controlled as well, who would dare to make a move against the Lotus Kingdom? They want to use you as a life-saving talisman. Si Wuyan's words made Gong Yimo come back to her senses. That's right, if she went deep into the enemy's den and something happened, it wouldn't just be her problem alone. It would also implicate the three countries. Moreover, looking at the other party's attitude, it was obvious that they didn't want to hurt Shuo Lian, so they came up with such a scheme. But she felt sorry for Shuo Lian. Gong Yimo was silent for a while before she shook her head. If you came today to take me away, then you can give up. She glanced at Shuo Lian and the hesitation in her eyes finally turned into determination. If you want to fight, then fight. I'm afraid that the people you brought won't even be able to take down the city gates. Seeing that Gong Yimo didn't agree, that person finally showed a difficult expression. Does Princess not care about the life and death of your biological mother? Gong Yimo smiled. If you wanted to kill her, you would have done so long. At this point, she was a little impatient. Can you stop playing tricks on me? If you are a man, then come out and fight. The other side saw Gong Yimo's resolute attitude and hesitated. They thought that the army was about to arrive. If Gong Yimo wasn't in their hands, they would lose the war. But as long as Gong Yimo was in their hands, after pondering for a while, he suddenly ordered someone to drag Shuo Lian away. Then he said, "Since that's the case, let's get straight to the point. Today, the princess insists on coming with us." Why? Gong Yimo was the first to frown. She didn't give the other party a chance to take advantage of her. How did she get infected? Thinking that there might be a worm in her body, Gong Yimo felt uncomfortable. Si Wuyan was also shocked. "Princess, you don't believe me." Following his words, Gong Yimo suddenly felt a heart-wrenching pain. Her face instantly turned pale. Si Wuyan was also shocked. Enough. Stop it. Although she didn't know whose body the mother worm was in, but that person must be in the group of people below, the other party stopped. But Gong Yimo was drenched in cold sweat. That feeling of lingering fear came. There was really a worm in her body. But she didn't notice it at all. She had been guarding against it. How did the other party do it? And the last time in Yuhan Karst Cave, it didn't happen. After all, if she was already infected with the mother worm, the other party wouldn't have fed her the mother worm, unless, at this moment, the leader laughed out loud. Originally I didn't want to expose it now. I wanted to catch Regent off guard, but it doesn't matter now. Princess should have felt it right. I think Princess must be wondering when you were infected with the worm. He seemed to be proud and regretful. Last time in Yuhan Karst Cave, what I fed you was actually the spirit-eating worm which can live in the human brain. But it's a pity that I don't know what trick Princess used, so you didn't eat it. Otherwise, you would have been one of us. And it would be our most powerful weapon. But it's not too late now. Princess, please. Gong Yimo's palm turned and the poison pill that she had hidden in her space was dug out. She passed it to Si Wuyen and frowned as she said quickly, "Take a look. Is this the spirit-eating worm or the spirit-eating worm?" Si Wuyen didn't know why she was still pursuing this at this time. But he still opened the pill. Seeing the worm egg, he said with certainty, "This is the spirit-eating worm." At that moment, it was as if there were many lines exploding in Gong Yimo's mind. Finally, they connected into a straight line. Back in the Karst Cave, Shuese had forced her to eat this pill and said that it was the spirit-eating worm. She pretended to eat it, but in reality, she had thrown it into her space. And that Scarface knew that she didn't eat it. She thought that the reason why he could sense it was because the mother worm was in his body. She didn't expect that she already had a child worm in her body. So the mother worm could sense that she didn't eat the spirit-eating worm. Thinking of many details that she had neglected at the beginning, Gong Yimo's hands cracked. Finally, she said, "All right, I'll go with you." The other party was very satisfied with her understanding of the situation. But when he saw the nervous Si Wuyen, he suddenly said unhurriedly, "Before we leave, Princess, you should kill the Yuchi monarch by your side first." Everyone on the city wall was shocked. Those who didn't know the situation subconsciously distanced themselves from Gong Yimo. But Si Wuyen didn't move. He looked at Gong Yimo without the slightest bit of evasion. "I won't kill him," Gong Yimo said without hesitation. The other party's tone deepened. Could it be that Princess wants to experience the pain of the goo worm drilling into your heart again? At this moment, Si Wuyen also realized the seriousness of the situation. Soon, the rulers of the 4 countries would gather here. They had all received great kindness from Gong Yimo and liked her. And the other party wanted to use this opportunity to make use of Gong Yimo to get rid of all the rulers of the 4 countries in one fell swoop. It was no wonder that the enemies, who had always been cowering, suddenly went around provoking them. Just you stayed alone wasn't enough. They wanted to force Yuheng and Lu Yi to make a move. Gong Yimo was in a dilemma. At this moment, she already knew how she fell into the trap. But she couldn't do it to Si Wuyen. The other party had already lost his patience. Looks like Princess really wants to experience the pain of the goo worm drilling into your heart. If you accidentally die, you and your corpse will be 2 lives. Gong Yimo struggled even more. Si Wuyen suddenly clenched his fists. "It's okay. Just kill me. Anyway, my life was given by you." Chapter 742. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth and said to the people below, "It's useless even if you kill him. In Yuchi, there are people who can hold their own. Even if Si Wuyen dies, Yuchi won't fall into your hands." Si Wuyen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're making me feel useless." The people below seemed to think that killing Si Wuyen wouldn't cause chaos in Yuchi. However, what they wanted wasn't chaos in Yuchi, but Gong Yimo to kill someone. Once they started, they couldn't stop. Hence, they wanted to force Gong Yimo to take that step. Princess, there's no need to say any more. Kill him or you'll be the one who dies. Gong Yimo's eyes flashed with anger. What if I say no? The other party's expression darkened. Just as he was about to say something, Gong Yimo suddenly narrowed her eyes. In that instant, her princess-like aura exploded, causing the other party to choke on his words. If I say no, you'll let me experience the pain of a heart-piercing pain. Go ahead and try. If you have the ability, kill me right now. I'll respect you for being courageous men. Gong Yimo. Si Wuyen was a little worried when he saw her provoking the other party like this. The person below didn't expect Gong Yimo to still be so disobedient. He frowned, but when he thought of the bigger picture, it wouldn't do them any good to push Gong Yimo too hard, so he skipped over this issue. Forget it, forget it. I'll give the princess some face tonight. In that case. Princess, please. Gong Yimo sneered inwardly. She also wanted to meet that scarred face. Why did he have to do this? What good would it do him? Si Wuyen was still worried. If you go now, when Gong Dai and the others arrive, I'm afraid it'll be difficult. Gong Yimo stopped in her tracks and said sternly. If they're using me to threaten you, don't listen. Si Wuyen smiled bitterly. Are you kidding? Let's not talk about us. Do you think Gong Dai will do nothing if he knows that you are in danger? Gong Yimo was silent. Finally, he said slowly before going down the city gate. No matter what happens, tell him to trust me. Seeing Gong Yimo come down, the other party had achieved his goal and revealed a big smile. It's not easy to invite the princess as a guest. Princess, please. Gong Yimo's eyes scanned the crowd. She knew that the mastermind behind the scenes was in this group of people, but she didn't know who it was. She was annoyed. Since things had come to this point, she could only deal with it as it came. On the way back, Shuai Lian saw that Gong Yimo had also come. She asked in a panic, "Mor. How could you be so stupid? Don't worry about me, they won't do anything to me." Gong Yimo was sitting in the same carriage as her. When she saw her, she couldn't help but smile. It's fine. This matter has nothing to do with you. It was me who accidentally fell into their trap and got hit by the heart with Yu Gu. What? Shuai Lian was stunned. But because she had not been with Gong Yimo for a long time, she did not have the right to speak about this matter. She could only say gloomily. Why did you also fall into their trap? What should we do? Gong Yimo saw that she was in a daze and wanted to say something. But in the end, she held herself back. Just like that, they arrived at Lotus Country. Gong Yimo saw that Shuai Lian was still staying in the bedroom that she had stayed in previously. She sighed in her heart. Then, the other party brought her to another residence. On the way, Gong Yimo suddenly said, "This princess wants to see your king." The person who led the way was stunned. "The king is not someone you can meet just because you want to, you have already personally come to fetch me. Why are you still hiding? This princess really can't stand your bashful behavior." The other party was stunned and immediately showed anger. "Princess, do you really think that you are here as a guest? You better behave yourself. Otherwise, the feeling of the goo worms drilling into your heart will not be pleasant." Under the night sky, Gong Yimo stopped in her tracks. The wind blew her hair and her small face was indescribably cold and solemn. If he doesn't come to see this princess, next time, this princess will tell Shuai Lian his true identity. Gong Yimo's words made the other party panic. What true identity? Princess, don't speak nonsense, heh. Gong Yimo chuckled. Someone had unknowingly appeared behind her. He was wearing an ordinary guard's uniform and had an ordinary face. But the moment he appeared, the person in front of Gong Yimo bowed. Gong Yimo heard his footsteps and sighed sorrowfully. What should I call you? Godfather? Father? Fuya? Or Shui? She slowly turned sideways and glanced at the other party. The palace was silent in the middle of the night. In front of an exquisite hall, a beautiful woman looked back with a smile, but her eyes were cold. The guard sighed and took off the mask on his face, revealing a hideous scarred face. He said coldly, "It doesn't matter what you call me. I just didn't expect the princess to be so intelligent." Gong Yimo reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear and said calmly, "It's actually not hard to guess. I look like I don't care, but in fact, when I'm worried, I'll be careful with everything that enters my mouth. It's impossible for me to be infected with the heart goo worm. The only possibility is that when I lost my memory and didn't know what was going on, someone took advantage of it." Shui chuckled. "I see. That's true. The princess has always been a rough person with a meticulous mind. I don't know who you take after." Gong Yimo sneered as well. "It's definitely not you." Shui's smile froze. "I know that you have something that doesn't belong to the ordinary," he suddenly said seriously. Gong Yimo knew that he was talking about the space, so she didn't hide it. So, you're not my child," he said confidently. "I'm a mortal, and your mother is also a normal person. Only that stone came from the sky. Lian grew up with stone powder, so the child she was pregnant with was also not a human child. That's why you have something that doesn't belong to the ordinary." Gong Yimo sneered. "Should I say that you're very imaginative?" He shook his head. "Look at you. Everything you know is not something a child who grew up in the cold palace can come into contact with. The only possibility is that you were born with it." As he said that, he pursed his lips. "Although you seem to be immortal now, I've never dared to underestimate you. Gong Yimo, you're a dangerous person. To be called a dangerous person by a very dangerous mastermind, that feeling was really indescribable." Gong Yimo pursed her lips and smiled. "Should I thank you for valuing me so much?" He nodded. "When it comes to you, I don't dare to relax for even a moment." As he said that, he approached her step by step. He stared at her without blinking, as if he wanted to see through her. "I'm someone who's here to achieve great things. And you are my biggest stumbling block." Chapter 743. I'm a stumbling block. Gong Yimo's voice echoed in the room, sounding especially cold and cheerless. "If you want to rule the world, I've laid an absolute foundation for you. Now that the 4 countries are stable and prosperous, as long as you can ascend to that position, you'll be an emperor for all eternity." She changed the topic. "If you want to destroy the world, I've given you an absolute opportunity. If you capture me and use me well, it'll be enough to throw the world into chaos." Shui looked at the beautiful face in front of him and his expression softened. "You're right. You're a stumbling block, but you're also a very good stepping stone. No, I should say that you're an extremely sharp double-edged sword. If there's no interference from outsiders, you can become a saint and help the world. If you want to destroy the world, I'm afraid this world won't be able to escape catastrophe. So I'm not wrong when I say that you're a dangerous person." Gong Yimo narrowed her eyes. "So you captured me to take over the world, or to destroy the world?" He smiled faintly. "Princess, you're exceptionally intelligent. Don't you understand my intentions? I'm a commoner and I have ambitions too. If I hadn't seen you, it would have been fine. But when I first saw you, those hidden desires exploded. Gong Yimo knew that he was talking about their first meeting in Lien Kingdom. When I found out about your identity, I thought, if I could have the jade in your hands and become the ruler of the continent, wouldn't it be great? That way, I wouldn't have to hide in a corner. I wouldn't have to hide my identity in front of Lien. At that time, I'll announce a law that allows close relatives to marry, and Lien won't be able to reject me anymore. Gong Yimo smiled but didn't say anything. Shui Lien rejected you not because of your identity. Perhaps you don't know. When I was young, I lived the lowest life. Everyone in the Holy Land looked down on me and could come over to trample on me. Even Lien avoided me. Perhaps Lien would only see me in a new light when I became a superior person. So, I left the Holy Land. But later on, I worked so hard for so long, but I only managed to establish a tiny lotus kingdom. Later on, I took Lien in and married her. Only then did I slowly suppress that ambition. But when I saw you, that ambition couldn't be suppressed anymore. Not only did he reignite, but he's also extremely daring. Gong Yimo couldn't help but mock. I don't care what you say. He smiled coldly. I've been paying attention to all your movements. I didn't expect that I would be able to use my skills. Lien was taking in the Snow Clan people everywhere, but she rejected Shui Qianzhong and Shui Se. They found me. They have the Saint Stone, and I have you. Isn't this the heavens hearing my voice, and giving me a great ambition? Other people's ambitions are built bit by bit. You, on the other hand, are full of schemes and plots. Gong Yimo sneered. Even if you take over this country, others won't be convinced. When the time comes, I'm afraid there will be endless internal strife. Shui Ye's expression turned ferocious. I have goo poison, same heart goo, and spirit-eating goo. Whoever doesn't listen, I'll turn them into puppets. What I want is a supreme position. I want them to listen to me. It doesn't matter if they have thoughts or not. You're really crazy. Gong Yimo thought of something, and said disdainfully, that's true, how can I not be crazy? What Shui Lien likes is your mask. You've been pretending every day for so long. You must have gone crazy from holding it in, right? Shut up. When I become the world's overlord, she'll know who's the man who's truly worthy of her love. Gong Yimo grinned. What if she still doesn't like you when you become the world's overlord? Seeing that the other party was at a loss for words, Gong Yimo smiled deeply. Then you'll abandon her and find other obedient women. What do you mean for Shui Lien? Don't make excuses for your ambition, you're clearly doing it for your own ambition. You're greedy for riches, unwilling to be ordinary, and extremely selfish. Just like when you liked Shui Lien, she refused, so you forced her. You don't care about other people's feelings at all. You only care about yourself. Why are you pretending to be a saint now? Shut up. He roared angrily. Then, Gong Yimo felt a piercing pain. Why, are you angry from embarrassment? Your lie is exposed. It doesn't look good. Even if it hurt. But Gong Yimo still gritted her teeth and mocked him. Large beads of sweat rolled down her face. She was in so much pain that she clutched her chest and squatted down, but she didn't cry out in pain. Shui Yi narrowed his eyes, and suddenly let her go. You'll know in the future that I really love her. I'll know. The pain disappeared, and Gong Yimo sneered. Now that you're being so frank, it seems like you've already decided how to treat me, right? In order to not let Shui Lien know, you'll destroy my consciousness. How would I know then? He smiled faintly. If you ignored the scar, he was actually quite good-looking, and it was undeniable that Gong Yimo looked quite like him. But when she thought of his character, Gong Yimo was glad that she was a soul that had transmigrated. What should I do? You're so smart, I don't even want to destroy you. He approached and grabbed Gong Yimo's chin, forcing her to look up. Gong Yimo looked at him, and a murderous look flashed across her eyes. If I kill you now, what will happen to me? You'll die. He was high and mighty, and his voice was cold. The child will die, but the mother won't. If the mother dies, the child will die. That sounds so unfair. I really want to try and see if it's really that unfair. Gong Yimo sneered. He gave a gentle smile that he would have when he returned to the cliff, and pulled Gong Yimo up. Go ahead and try. It's late, princess, you should rest early. Gong Yimo got up and stared at him. Have a good trip, I won't see you out. With that, her footsteps were a little shaky, but she walked into the house with a straight back. The night was still long, but she couldn't just sit and wait for death. When she thought about how Gong Dai would be threatened by Shui if he knew about her situation, Gong Yimo touched her stomach, and her heart was in a mess. Perhaps she could make Shui Lian do something now. If Shui really valued Shui Lian that much, Shui Lian might be able to make him change his mind, but based on his attitude, his feelings for Shui Lian might not be comparable to his ambition. Besides, she was now under his surveillance. She might not be able to hold on before she told Shui Lian the truth. Also, she was afraid that Shui Lian wouldn't be able to take the blow and do something extreme. This was also the reason why she didn't say anything in the carriage. If Shui Lian did something to provoke that person, it would most likely produce the opposite of the desired effect. Gong Yimo pondered and finally decided that no matter if it worked or not, she had to let Shui Lian try. Chapter 744. Early the next morning, Gong Yimo was brought to Crazy Old by Shui. No matter what price I have to pay, I want this woman to listen to my orders, Shui pointed at Gong Yimo and said to Crazy Old. He was determined to get Gong Yimo. Crazy Old looked Gong Yimo up and down and said rudely, okay. I got it. You go out and wait. Shui knew this old man's temper, so he did not hesitate. He just said to Gong Yimo, if you dare to do anything to him, I will dare to do anything to your child. I hope the princess will behave. Gong Yimo shrugged indifferently. I won't fight with you with myself. You don't deserve it. Shui sneered and went out. Crazy Old was not polite to Gong Yimo. Give me your hand and let me bleed. Gong Yimo looked at him and gave him a bowl of blood. The old man did not expect Gong Yimo to be so cooperative. He snorted and left with the bowl of blood. Gong Yimo was so cooperative because she wanted to know the difference between herself and other poison victims. On the other side, Gong Dai rushed over and heard that Lian Gua had taken Gong Yimo away. He was so angry that he laughed. You said that royal sister was poisoned by the heart with love goo. Si Wuyen heard his voice and felt panic. Yes. If not, Gong Yimo would not have gone with them. After listening to Si Wuyen's explanation of the situation at that time, Gong Yi had a guess in his heart. Imperial sister was such a cautious person, and she had the space. It was impossible for her to be poisoned. The only explanation was that she had lost her memory. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. Last time, royal sister told him that the mastermind behind all this was Shui Lian's half-brother, Shui. But now it seemed that this Shui was very likely Fu Ye. Si Wuyen's retelling of Shui Lian's behavior proved that she was also kept in the dark and did not know about this matter. Gong Dai smiled coldly. The other party wanted to protect his wife, but came to hurt his wife. How could he allow that? With that thought in mind, Gong Dai patted the monkey beside him. Previously, he had guessed that it might be useful, but he didn't expect it to come in handy. Shui Lian didn't see Gong Yimo for the entire morning. She couldn't help but feel anxious. At this time, she suddenly saw a little monkey. Because the Lotus Country was located in the depths of the forest, it was normal for animals to appear occasionally. However, this monkey clearly looked different. Although it was small, it looked very smart. To be able to hide from so many guards and sneak here quietly, it was as if it had become a spirit. Shui Yan's nerves had been tense recently. When she saw a strange monkey, she didn't dare to relax. The monkey opened its mouth and spat out a wax ball. Shui Yan was surprised and carefully picked it up. After crushing it, she opened the note inside and was shocked by the words on it. It was Gong Dai. He said that Shui was her husband? But how was that possible? How was that possible? Shui was only the child of a father and a slave. He was naturally gloomy, just like a rat in the gutter or a poisonous snake in a cave. It was disgusting. However, Fuya was a gentle and refined young master. He said that he was originally a noble in Yuheng. Because of political differences with his family, he angrily left his hometown and came to the intersection of the three countries. He built a country outside of this world and treated people gently, just like the sun. Shui was ambitious, while Fuya handled things indifferently. Shui was gloomy, while Fuya was warm. They were clearly two different people. She was Fuya's wife. How could she not recognize him? However, it was fine if she didn't think about it. Now that she thought about it, there were flaws everywhere. Why did Shui not appear for so long? Why did he target the Lotus Country the moment he appeared? There were tens of thousands of people in the Lotus Country. How did the remnants of the Shui clan who fled outside catch Fuya? Also, he still let her live in the palace she used to live in. When she ate, he also arranged for her to eat her favorite dishes. Shui Yan suddenly felt that she couldn't think about it anymore. She stumbled and rushed out, but was stopped by the guards. In the past, Shui Yan was worried about Fuya and didn't dare to pester him. But now, she had nowhere to vent her anger. She grabbed the guard's spear and said fiercely, "I want to see your king. Where's Shui? I want to see him now." The guards were in a difficult situation because they had received orders not to harm Shui Yan. But if Shui Yan was like this, what should they do? In the end, Shui personally appeared. He frowned. "What is it?" The moment she saw him, Shui Yan suppressed all her anger. She carefully stared at the man in front of her. Her eyes were filled with anger and tears, but she didn't say a word. Shui suddenly had a bad feeling. He walked into the room and had everyone leave. At this time, Shui Yan seemed to have calmed down a lot. She stared at Shui. The more she looked, the more she felt that everything was different. Impossible. How could Shui be Fuya? She shook her head and suddenly said, "Let me see your left hand." Shui Yan suddenly asked. Shui was shocked, but he subconsciously withdrew his left hand and clenched it. He was wearing a glove on his left hand. Did she suspect him? But last night in the carriage, he heard clearly that Gong Yimo didn't tell Shui Yan anything about his identity. He was on guard everywhere. Where did he slip up? If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Shui felt that he couldn't stay any longer. He turned and prepared to leave. Fuya. Shui's footsteps paused, then he sped up and walked forward. "If you dare to go out, I'll die right here." Shui Yan's words successfully made Shui stop. His lips moved. Finally, he turned and said, "Have you gone crazy thinking about Fuya? Don't you know who I am?" Shui Yan pressed the hairpin against her neck. Hearing this, she said sadly, "I don't know who you are. Put the hairpin down, don't come near me." Shui Yan became agitated again. The tip of the hairpin pierced her neck. Shui Yi stood there nervously. At this moment, his whole body was tense, and the scar on his face looked even more ferocious. When he saw Shui Lian, he knew that he couldn't hide it anymore, so he asked coldly. Who told you? It was actually true. At that moment, Shui Lian only felt that the world was spinning. The world had changed beyond recognition. Seeing that she couldn't stand steadily, Shui Yi worriedly took a step closer, but Shui Lian rebounded even more strongly. You, don't come near me. Her eyes widened, and big drops of tears fell. I don't know you anymore. Don't come near me. Her crying made Shui Yi's heart ache. He was silent for a long time. Suddenly, he took out a human skin mask. Under Shui Lian's terrified gaze, he slowly turned into that familiar face. There was a smile on his lips, and he treated people like a spring breeze. But at this moment, his eyes were miserable. Do you feel better now? Chapter 745. Shulian was so shocked that she forgot to cry. It was true. He really was Fuya. Shui Yi approached her step by step. That gentle face was the one she was most familiar with. In the past, she felt that Fuya always smiled and was easy to bully. But now, she felt that no matter how she looked at it, that smile was stiff and strange. You killed him. You must have killed him and then stolen his face. You bastard, I'm going to kill you. As Shulian spoke, she tried to stab him with the hairpin like a madwoman, but Shui Yi grabbed her wrist. My husband doesn't know martial arts, you liar. Shui Yi pulled hard and trapped Shulian in his arms. He looked at the face close to him and said coldly, It's because I've been taking medicine to suppress my internal energy. It's all a disguise. Shui Yi was using Fuya's face, but his voice was his own. That cold tone was incompatible with that gentle face. Shulian shook her head in panic. She wanted to break free from her own hand, but she was powerless. She said angrily, My husband is kind and benevolent. He's far from a beast like you. Shui Yi's voice was even colder. God knows how much effort it took to maintain that image. I didn't want to save people. I just wanted them to be grateful and obey me. Shulian's face paled. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, Shui Yi continued. Why do you think I wanted to marry you the moment I saw you? Why do you think I didn't want to have children with you? Why do you think I took in the Shui clan unconditionally? At this point, Shui Yi laughed coldly. I do love you, but I'm afraid that the child with you will either be born disabled or a monster like Gong Yimo. I took in the Shui clan because I had a feeling that my chance had come. As he spoke, he stroked Shulian's hair with his left hand, which had a broken finger. Now that Gong Yimo is in our hands, I've also asked people to prepare the poison. As long as I give the order, all the Shui clan members in the country will be poisoned and become our puppets. Besides Gong Yimo, we'll also have a fearless army. No matter how strong the three countries are, they're no match for us. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. When the time comes, I'll be the king, and you'll still be my only empress. I'll let everyone know how wise your decision to marry me was. Shulian, who had been struggling, suddenly stopped moving. She stared blankly at the agitated Shui Yi and spoke with a trembling voice. So, half of your ambition is for me. Shui Yi brought her hand that was holding the hairpin to his mouth and kissed it. It's all for us, can you stop? Shui Lian's words stunned Shui Yi. Shulian stared at his face that belonged to Fuya. If you really love me, can you stop? I don't want to be the empress of the world at all. I just want to stay here and protect my people. I want to be with you forever. Shulian was not lying. At least, that was what she had always thought before she found out about Fuya's true identity. Shui pursed his lips and did not speak. Shuolian took a step closer. Didn't you say that you love me? Didn't you say that everything you're doing now is for us? Then I don't want it anymore. Can you return to your original appearance? Shui heard this and suddenly let go of her hand and took 2 steps back. No. Lian, you don't understand the beauty of power. When that day comes, you'll be grateful to me. Shuolian looked at him in disbelief. So, you're not willing to give up your so-called ambition for me? Shui looked at her and tears flowed out of his eyes again. Don't cry. Shuolian suddenly shouted, You're not Fuya. He won't reject any of my requests. You're not him. I'm him. Shui interrupted her coldly. I've had enough. I don't want to wear a mask anymore. As he spoke, he suddenly tore off Fuya's mask and threw it on the ground. All these years, the person who has been with you day and night, accompanying you, loving you, and doting on you is me. Look carefully, it's all me. As Shui spoke, he took a few steps forward and grabbed Shuolian, forcing her to see him clearly. But Shuolian's eyes were filled with tears and she could no longer see clearly. You're not my husband, I am. Lian, look at me. It's me. It's always been me. Shuolian suddenly pushed him away fiercely. If it's you, Mo, is your own flesh and blood, but you can do this to her. You're not human. Shui told her stubbornly, she's not my child, she's not human. Lian, listen to me. Enough. Shuolian did not want to hear any more. I'll ask you one last time, between the country and me, who will you choose? Seeing the madness in Shuolian's eyes, Shui lowered his voice but told her firmly. I want both the country and you. Shuolian was already in despair, she felt as if there was a big hole in her chest. She had never been in such pain before. What if I can only choose one? Shui did not speak, but his silence represented everything. At that moment, Shuolian understood what it meant to be destroyed. It turned out that from the beginning to the end, she had not escaped the curse. The men she had met were not good people. She had always been lied to. Why should she know the truth? She did not want to know at all. Seeing Shuolian's soul in despair, Shui did not feel good either. But he believed that one day, Shuolian would think things through and understand the beauty of power. She would know how much he loved her, and then he would give her the best of everything. Rest. In the future, you're not allowed to go anywhere except to the pharmacist. When this is over, when I become the ruler of the world, I'll let you out. Seeing that Shuolian still did not speak, his voice became gentler. After all, they had been husband and wife for so long. How could he be so cruel to her? Lian, it's very dangerous outside now, so you don't have to worry about anything. Stay here at ease. Soon, the world will be different. With that, he did not wait for Shuolian's reaction and left as if he was escaping. He was even afraid that Shuolian would take things too hard, so he sent more people over. He was afraid that Shuolian would commit suicide. Gong Yimo naturally did not know that so many things had happened. After the old man took her blood, he added all kinds of medicine to test the reaction while mumbling something she did not understand. Gong Yimo saw that he was seriously studying it and said casually, even if the old man is dead, he won't be able to control it. Will the mother Gu really not die if the son Gu dies? The old man looked at her gloomily. Put away those thoughts. Even if the child in your body dies, the mother will not die. Why? This does not conform to the witchcraft rules. Chapter 746. The old man seemed to think that she was about to die, so he said it without hesitation. Of the two people who have been poisoned by the with heart's goo, if one of the goo worms dies, the other will die too. The dead goo worm's corpse contains a deadly poison that will poison the person who is still alive. However, there is a poisonous goo king in that man's body, so he is fine even after eating so many with heart's goo worms. Because if one of the mother goo worms dies, its corpse will be eaten by the goo king. So even if you die, nothing will happen to him. Give up. Gong Yimou did not expect Shui Yi to be so scary. He was cruel to others, but he was also cruel to himself. Then what can I do to get the child goo out? The old man frowned, seeming to be impatient. One way is for the mother goo to summon the child goo. But that was impossible. She was Shui Yi's trump card. Shui Yi would never let her go. There's another way. The old man looked at her mockingly. For a strong person of the transcendent realm, no matter what kind of poison is in his body, it will be destroyed by his inner strength. But Gong Yimou was only at the 6th stage. Once she reached the transcendent realm, she would be at the 9th stage. It seemed like there was no other way. Gong Yimou smiled bitterly. Just then, she felt something rubbing against her feet. She thought it was a mouse, but when she looked down, she realized it was a little monkey. Gong Yimou saw that the old man was busy. She took out a pen and paper from her space and wrote a few words as she asked. What does he want? Is it not enough that I've been poisoned by the with heart's goo? How does he want to control me? The old man said unconcernedly. Your blood contains a high concentration of goo poison. Part of it is the bloodline you inherited when you were in your mother's womb. Another part is that you have taken double the amount of goo poison. So, whether it's the so-called holy stone or the stone heart, they can't control you. Because you are so close to becoming the king of goo poison, he smiled darkly. And that person probably wants you to completely lose your mind and become obedient. It's actually very simple to achieve this goal. Gong Yimou felt uneasy. How? I'll make you the true king of goo poison. The old man suddenly raised a bottle of liquid medicine excitedly. Gong Yimou still wanted to ask, but there was a noise outside the door. Gong Yimou kicked the monkey, and it immediately hid cleverly. Then, what do we have to do to make her the king of goo poison? Shui Yi walked in with a solemn expression. When he looked at Gong Yimou, there was a flash of murderous intent. In his opinion, it must have been Gong Yimou who told Shui Lian. Otherwise, how could Shui Lian know about this? But he couldn't kill her to vent his anger because she was still useful to him. The old man stroked his beard. As long as the goo poison in her body accumulates to a certain amount, she will naturally lose her mind. Then, you can use the holy stone to guide her. If she doesn't listen, use the heart goo to torture her. With a beating, she will be obedient. Gong Yimou was at the side. When she heard them discussing how to deal with her, she didn't show it on her face, but her heart was a little cold. She pinched the stone heart around her neck. Since this thing appeared with her, then it must have its uses. Shui Lian had once said that she felt that the stone heart could be eaten. It was just a vague feeling, so she let Gong Yimou eat it when she was forced into a corner. Gong Yimou felt that she was at her most helpless right now. She had been poisoned by the heart goo. No matter if the other party wanted her to kill someone or use her to threaten Gong Dai, these were things that she couldn't accept. Moreover, she had a child. She couldn't be manipulated by them like this. Shui Yi stopped the old man and glanced at Gong Yimou. There's no time to lose. Daiyu State and Yuheng's army have arrived today. When Lu Ye's army arrives tomorrow, we'll turn her into our puppet. It's just that she's pregnant. It's a little difficult to turn her into a weapon. Why don't we? The old man meant to abort the child. Shui Yi thought of Shui Lian. He opened his mouth and said, "We'll keep her child. When it's born, if it's useful, we'll raise it." The old man didn't care. After all, he wasn't the one who needed a human-shaped weapon. Shui walked step by step to Gong Yimo. "Are you afraid?" He smiled viciously. "This is the price you have to pay for harming me. Now that your mother is living a life worse than death, you must be very happy, right?" Gong Yimo knew that Gong Dai was taking revenge on him. Although she couldn't bear to see Shui Lian like this, at this time, it would be good if Shui Lian could hold Shui back a little, so she smiled coldly. "You're the one who made my mother's life worse than death. Anyone who finds out that the person they love the most suddenly becomes the person they hate the most would find it hard to accept, Fuya." Shui pursed his lips. "You're still so stubborn. Don't worry, when you become my weapon, I'll let you kill your husband with your own hands." Gong Yimo smiled coldly. "It hasn't started yet. Who knows who will win?" Shui said to the old man. "Prepare the medicine. Tomorrow will be the day I dominate the world." His eyes were full of ambition. The old man didn't care. Whoever dominated the world had nothing to do with him. He only cared about his medicine. Moreover, he was also looking forward to the changes that would happen to Gong Yimo's body tomorrow. That night, after thinking about it, Gong Yimo asked Little Monkey to send a letter back. Tomorrow, Shui wanted to turn her into a puppet. She still couldn't be sure of the effects of the stone heart poison, but she couldn't just sit around and wait for death. She believed that Gong Dai wasn't a passive person. If Shui wanted to use a conspiracy to win, they might be able to work together. It was still the same sentence. She was at a disadvantage now, but it was still unknown who would win. After Gong Dai received Gong Yimo's reply, he was silent for a while. "Do you think that if we can get the Goo King in Shui's body, we can get the Goo King to force the child Goo out of Royal Sister's body?" After reading the letter, Si Wuyan said, "In theory, it's possible. After a goo worm evolves and grows wings, it can become a Goo King. The Goo King in Shui's body is obviously the mother goo that he first took. It evolved step by step. When the Goo King's child goo is in danger, it will break out of the body. At that time, we can catch it. However, we don't know whose body the Goo King's child goo is in." Gong Dai glanced at him. Without thinking twice, it must be in Shui Lian's body. Si Wuyan froze. "That's Amor's mother. What do you want to do to her?" Gong Dai narrowed his eyes. "I have no choice." "Ha, so you'd better keep everything that happened tonight to your grave. You're not allowed to say a word in front of Royal Sister ever." Si Wuyan looked at him warily. "I already felt that something was wrong when you sent the letter to Shui Lian. You're not a reckless person. Why are you doing this?" In the candlelight, Gong Dai raised his eyebrows coldly. "To let the other party have a taste of my anger." Chapter 747. To be honest, Gong Yimo's plan was very risky. However, in such a passive situation, she would not become a demon if she did not take the risk. Gong Dai was also willing to take the gamble with her. He wrote a letter to the royal sister. His pen seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He only hoped that the royal sister would be safe and sound in this adventure. When he finally released the little monkey, Gong Dai's gaze had become extremely vicious. Since the other party wanted to play tricks, he was willing to play along. He only hoped that the other party would be able to bear the consequences. While he was busy mobilizing his troops, the other side was also preparing to attack. Shui did as he said. He really turned the entire Lotus Kingdom's people into puppets. Actually, this was not done in a day. Ever since he had the idea of annexing the 4 kingdoms, he had poisoned the Lotus Kingdom's only water source. The commoners drank it every day and were already slightly poisoned. These 2 days, he had suddenly increased the dosage. It was late at night. A red-eyed owl flew onto a branch and looked down at the peaceful Lotus Kingdom. It suddenly cried out. That cry was made from a sacred stone. Not only was it ear-piercing, it also traveled very far. At that moment, all the poisoned people in the Lotus Kingdom were awakened. Pairs of scarlet eyes were like evil spirits in the dark. The very few who were not poisoned were immediately killed by the poisoned people. Most of them were killed by their own family members in their sleep. Cries and screams were incessant. Everywhere, there were people running away and murderous figures, but no one came to maintain order. After experiencing panic, chaos, resistance, and massacre, there was no one else in the entire Lotus Kingdom other than the poisoned people. Everywhere was filled with the roars of wild beasts. Those people's hands were stained with blood as they wandered around. Their eyes were scarlet, and they only wanted to find prey to vent their exploding pain. Gong Yimo heard it from the palace. She did not expect Shui to be so deranged. If that old lunatic could not develop an antidote, then wouldn't these 10,000 people be beasts for the rest of their lives? Thinking of this, Gong Yimo was even more determined to take this gamble. Even if it was not for herself, it was for those innocent people. However, she was still afraid. However, this fear disappeared when she received Gong Dai's reply. She calmed down. No matter what the outcome was, she was not fighting alone. When it was close to dawn, Shui rushed in with medicine. He went straight to the point. Good girl, hand over the stone heart. I know it's around your neck. This was a bit beyond Gong Yimo's expectations. She thought he would use the soul-devouring insect, the kind that parasitized in the brain, to control the poisoned person. She didn't expect him to use stone heart. If the stone heart was given to him, then wouldn't Gong Ju and the others really have to fight against 10,000 beasts? I won't give you the stone heart. Don't you have the spirit-eating vermin? Shui sneered. I have to be careful when it comes to you. Although the stone heart is more controllable, I'm afraid you have a trick up your sleeve. So, I've decided to use the simplest method to control the poisoned. Hand it over. Otherwise, you don't want to have a taste of the stone heart. Gong Yimo fell silent. Although the stone heart was not in their plan, she believed that Gong Dai could get it back for her. However, it would take more effort and more people would die. Shui lost his patience when he saw that she did not speak. Don't forget that you're pregnant. You can withstand the stone heart, but aren't you afraid that the child in your belly can't? Speaking of the child, Gong Yimo finally relaxed. She pulled the stone heart off her neck. This was the first time she hated someone so much. Shui was like a tiger that had grown wings after obtaining the stone heart. He brought the medicine over and forced Gong Yimo to drink it. This is poison. I want you to swallow it all until you become the king of poison. Otherwise, I'll kill the child in your belly. Despicable. Gong Yimo looked at his scarred face with uncontrollable anger. Such a beast in human face, no wonder mother hated him so much. But now was not the time to be impulsive. She would drink this poison. She guessed that when the poison in her body reached saturation and she took the stone heart, her body would undergo a strange change. At that time, if this did not work, she still had other tricks up her sleeve. So, success or failure depended on this. Seeing that Gong Yimo really drank all the poison, Shui's eyes flashed with madness. And Gong Yimo's eyes instantly turned red like a wild beast. At that moment, he felt that the person standing in front of him was an undefeatable evil god. She was no longer a mortal. Gong Yimo felt terrible. The poison was changing her body. She could feel that under the effect of madness, her strength was rising little by little. She broke through the 7th level in an instant and was slowly attacking the 8th level. Seeing that Gong Yimo's emotions were unstable and her madness was unstable, Shui could not help but watch over her, his eyes nervous and excited. Quickly change. Become a Terminator, become a butcher's knife in his hand. And with her, he would have 1 foot on the throne of the 4 countries. He would soon become the most powerful person in this world. At this moment, when the Lien kingdom was in chaos, a monkey came to Shui Lian's residence. Shui Lian looked like she had lost her soul. She looked out the window and was thinking about something. Feeling her clothes being pulled, Shui Lian lowered her head and saw a little monkey at her feet. Her first reaction was fear, because she could not forget the terrible news this monkey had brought. Indeed, the monkey spat out a wax pill. She trembled as she reached out to pick it up. After opening it, her pupils shrank. After a long while, tears fell from her pale face. There were only 2 words on it. Human pill. At that moment, Shui Lian felt that Gong Dai had seen through everything. He knew what she was thinking, what she was struggling with, and why she had not taken action. He seemed to be saying in a cold voice, "Wife or mother, she can only be one." Shui Lian wiped away her tears. Now, everyone was working hard. Everyone knew that what Shui was doing now was a terrible thing. Only she was still lost in her thoughts and wished she could sleep forever. Sleep forever. Shui Lian slowly stood up. She thought she understood what Gong Dai meant. At this moment, Liu Ye's army had also arrived. The 3 armies were holding the line. Longqing Wuji and Kim Yun had also come because they were worried about Gong Yimo. But when they rushed over, they saw Gong Dai playing chess with Si Wuyan. Do you think Shui Lian can understand your hints? Moreover, it's not good to force her to death, right? Actually, as long as she is in danger and feels extreme fear, the Gu King will appear. Hearing this, Gong Dai laughed coldly. She will understand. Previously, you told her about the idea of using humans to refine medicine. The royal sister also said that the Lien Kingdom's pharmacist has a huge medicine furnace. I think that pharmacist must have told Shui Lian about the human pill. Chapter 748. That's why she must understand. Gong Dai's words made Si Wuyan shudder. Why must you force her to her death? She's so pitiful. A cold light flashed in Gong Dai's eyes. Shui, this person, makes me fearful, uneasy, sad, and angry. Why can't I return what I've suffered 1,000 times over? Gong Dai looked at Longqing Wuji and Kim Yun, who were hurrying in, and smiled. He covets what doesn't belong to him, and creates consequences that even he can't clean up. I'll clean up his mess for him. Why can't I let him have a taste of being betrayed and left with nothing? His smile became colder and colder. In any case, what I've suffered, I must return it 1,000 times over. Si Wuyan felt a chill in his heart. But thinking about it, there were so many people who had been poisoned. If Shui Lian was really refined into a human pill, he was confident that he could replicate the antidote and save those who had been poisoned. So he didn't say anything. Shui Lian was pitiful. He only hoped that in her next life, she would be more alert. In the main palace of the Lotus Kingdom, the huge palace suddenly shattered. From the ruins, a woman slowly walked out. Her clothes had been torn into pieces and hung on her body. Her hair was draped over her shoulders and her head was lowered, making it impossible to see her appearance. And beside her, a man with a scar on his face had an excited expression. It's done, it's done. Shui pinched the stone heart. The pleasure made his eyes bloodshot. He really wanted Shui Lian to see how powerful he was now. See what kind of beast he could control. Gong Yimo's eyes were no longer conscious. But after being tortured by the goo worms a few times, she knew that this man could make her feel pain. She had to listen to him. After Shui admired her for a while, he received news that the rulers of the 4 kingdoms had gathered. Good. Shui was in high spirits. He looked at the people beside him with ambition and said loudly, "Today is the day we rule the world. After today, the Shui clan will be the kings of the 4 kingdoms. We won't let anyone kill us anymore. Follow the Snow King and rule the world. Follow the Snow King and conquer the world." The few remaining diehard loyalists shouted excitedly. Then, the cage in the dark was opened, and many birds flew out. They all had blood-red eyes, and circled in the sky. These were all birds trained by Shui, and every single one of them was controlled by the holy stone. They were the bugle horn that he used to send orders. In the distance, Shui Yan heard the shouts and curled her lips into a mocking smile. The person beside her was clearly afraid as well. Although he was loyal to Shui, his home had been turned upside down overnight. He could not bear such a change. Shui Yan said softly, "Are you afraid?" The young guard was stunned for a moment before he said, "Follow the Snow King and conquer the world." Shui Yan laughed even more mockingly. The voice of the young guard gradually lowered, as if he was not confident enough. "There are no longer any normal people in the entire Lotus Kingdom," Shui Yan said coldly. In order to be able to fight against the armies of the 3 countries, Shui had no choice but to turn all the civilians into puppets. The peaceful life of the past was no longer there. Shui Yan still remembered the incessant crying from last night, and in the end, only roaring was left. The young guard was even more afraid to speak, because his faith seemed to have begun to waver. Shui asked curiously as he walked towards the apothecary. "Can ambition really change a person's character? Was the person I once loved deeply really just a mask and a disguise? If that's really the case, isn't the act too real?" The young guard scratched his head and said, "Queen, the palace is not peaceful now. It's best if you don't go to the apothecaries. Go back to the palace." Shui Yan glanced at him. "I have the right to go to the apothecaries. You have no right to stop me." The guard did not dare to speak. Everyone was strange today. The weather was gloomy, as if a snowstorm was brewing. It was rare for the leaders of the 4 countries to gather, but Si Wuyan was still in the mood to joke. "I thought I wouldn't see you for a long time. I didn't expect you to arrive right after I left. What an ill-fated relationship." Kim Yoon smiled bitterly. They did not want such a thing to happen. Longqing Wuji frowned. "I was only afraid that Gong Yimo would be in danger. I didn't expect that she would still fall into the enemy's trap. Those people really don't know when to stop. This time, we must kill them all." Gong Dai concluded. "Isn't this formation too grand?" Si Wuyan was not optimistic about the Lotus country. They only have about 10,000 people. You guys have brought more than 100,000 people. Is there a need to be so serious? I think the most important thing is to save Gong Yimo, right? More than 100,000 people is not a lot. Gong Dai suddenly said. Based on the extent of those people's morbidity, they are very likely to make all 10,000 people in the Lotus country consume goo poison. What? Everyone was shocked. Kim Yoon said. If that is the case, so what if he wins? The antidote for the goo poison has not been found. Even if he succeeds in his scheme and becomes the emperor, there is no one who will help him with the affairs of the country. You all think too highly of each other. Si Wuyan sneered. That person called Shuese only wants power. He wants people to submit to him. He wants to be supreme. Therefore, he does not care if his subordinates are rational or not. He also did not think about how to govern after unifying the world. If he cares about the life and death of those commoners, he would not go around using goo poison. When everyone heard this, they felt that Si Wuyan's words were reasonable. This group of bugs. If he really dares to turn those 10,000 people into puppets, this war will not be easy to fight. If I had known earlier, I would not have rushed. I should have brought more people. There is also Mor. I wonder how she is now. Kim Yoon was very worried. Gong Dai said in a deep voice. The other party's doctor once said that royal sister can become the king of goo poison. This sentence reminded her. Royal sister has a guess. That is, when the goo poison in her body reaches saturation, what will happen if she eats the stone heart? She said that she does not believe that the king of goo poison is a wild beast without rationality. That stone heart must have an extraordinary effect. What if the stone heart does not allow her to have rationality? Kim Yoon asked. Royal sister has a second method. That is, to forcefully break through the 9th transformation realm. Gong Dai took a deep breath and said coldly. When the goo poison in her body explodes, her strength can reach the 8th transformation realm. At this time, as long as someone injects internal energy into her body, under the violent effect, there is a 50% chance of her breaking through to the 9th transformation realm. At that time, be it the goo poison or the goo worms, they will all disappear. At this point, Gong Dai frowned. However, to ensure that nothing goes wrong, I will think of a way to get the antidote for the goo poison and the goo king in Shuai's body. With these two things, royal sister will not have to take the risk. Chapter 749. In the end, Gong Dai still felt that it was too dangerous for Gong Yimo to gamble with herself. On the battlefield, the only thing he could do was to minimize the threat to Gong Yimo. Hence, he did not hesitate to kill Shuai Lian to get the antidote. Success or failure depended on this. With Shuai's command, the gates of the Lotus Kingdom opened wide. More than 10 birds rushed out and circled in the air. More than 10 sharp cries could be heard. In response, they were met with angry roars. The ground trembled slightly. Then, more than 10,000 poison people rushed towards the allied army like wild beasts released from their cages. Gong Dai heard the commotion from afar. A cold light flashed in his eyes. They're here. Longqing Wuji and the rest immediately prepared for battle. And Gong Dai saw the circling birds in the sky. His heart trembled. The seeds of the cattail wave grass can be removed. The enemy is not using the spirit-eating venomous insect to control these poison people. Shuai, he might have stolen royal sister's stone heart. Then what do we do? Kim Yoon was anxious. Will Mor be in danger? Gong Dai shook his head. There's a change in the plan. Royal sister has not taken the stone heart. It's very likely that she has taken too much venomous insect. You guys have to be careful. After taking too much medicine, she might reach the 8th level. You guys are no match for her. Longqing Wuji touched his chin. How about this, we'll hide among the ordinary soldiers. If the enemy sends Gong Yimo to attack us, she won't be able to find us for the time being. Gong Dai nodded. For now, the plan needs to change. In order to control these poison people, Shuai must be nearby. I'll enter the palace now to get the antidote. If you guys meet royal sister, don't fight her head on. Then, get the archers ready to shoot down those birds. Longqing Wuji said loudly. Go ahead. I'm good at leading troops. Even if the enemy is a bunch of lunatics, I can hold on until you return. Gong Dai nodded and expressed his thanks. At this moment, he realized that although these people were all coveting his treasures, they were all in the same group. But now was not the time to talk about this. Even if the royal sister wanted to take the stone heart, he needed to have the antidote in his hands. A great battle was about to break out. Shui laughed ferociously. He held the stone heart in his hand and shouted loudly. Charge! My people! The 10,000 poison people were stimulated by the shrill cries of the birds and responded with angry roars. They wanted to tear apart all humanoid beings. On the other side, Longqing Wuji let Si Wuyan blend into the crowd, while he led the troops of the three countries and shouted. Fight! Destroy these rats! The crowd responded in unison. Kim Yoon led a group of people to the high ground on the side. Their target was the birds. Archers, prepare. Shoot those strange birds down. In an instant, tens of thousands of arrows were fired. Below, the two sides also began to fight. At this moment, Gong Dai sneaked into the Lotus Kingdom. The Lotus Kingdom was already in a mess, but there were still many people in the palace. Gong Dai brought the little monkey and followed it to the place where the medicine master was. You said that you can use me to develop the antidote? After Shulian arrived, she went straight to the point. Crazy Ol was stunned and shook his head. No, I can't use you to refine the antidote. Why? Shulian pressed. Don't you want to refine the antidote? Or are you still thinking that this man will win? Shulian sneered. Don't worry, the three countries are heavily armed. Even if he uses all his tricks, he won't win. Crazy Ol buried his head in fiddling and kept silent. The medicine furnace buried deep in the ground was emitting steam. Why not? Shulian guessed. Could it be that you're also poisoned by the heart with love goo? The old man seemed to be annoyed by her. Because the battle is imminent. If you die, that guy will be in real danger. What do you mean? Shulian suddenly felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words. The old man saw that she was determined to get to the bottom of the matter, so he gave up and glared at her. There's a Goo King in Snow King's body, and this Goo King evolved from the heart with love Goo Mother Goo that was planted on you. That is to say, if you die now, the Goo King in his body will break out. At that time, there's no need to fight, he's dead. His explanation was like a bolt from the blue to Shulian. She said subconsciously, you said that there's a heart with love goo in my body, then, the love I had for him. The old man rolled his eyes. Maybe it's the effect of the heart with love goo. Look at the situation now, you're still thinking about this. Go back, don't come here and cause trouble. Shulian took a few steps back. She always thought that if there was anything real between her and Shui, then it would be this relationship, but this old man told her that this relationship could also be fake. Then why is he dead if something happens to me? After a long time, Shulian suddenly asked. The old man did not raise his head. If he did, he would know how pale Shulian's face was. Of course it's because the Goo King already has consciousness. If you're in danger, it will break out of your body. Once Snow King loses the Goo King, he will lose control of the child Goo. Because without the Goo King, if the child Goo dies, he will die too. That is to say, if I die, he won't be able to control Mo anymore. Shulian was already shocked out of her wits by the successive blows. She repeated these words over and over again, almost unable to think. The old man's heart was also very complicated, because he felt that the chances of Snow King winning this battle were not high. If Snow King died, how could he find another backer? He was thinking too seriously, so he did not notice that behind him, Shulian had taken off her clothes and was walking step by step towards the huge medicine furnace. If I die, Mo will be fine. Her white feet stepped on the ground, and it was endless cold. If I die, those poison people will have the antidote. Her eyes gradually became clear, and there was a sentence that could easily describe her current emotions. The greatest sorrow was the death of the heart. If only I die, at the same time, on the battlefield, because there were too many people in the Allied army, the 10,000 beasts did not have any suitable weapons and only knew how to bite, so the situation was not advantageous to Shuai. Especially after the telepathic birds were shot dead, the 10,000 people lost control and killed without any pattern. But it did not matter, he still had a trump card. The triumphant Shui held the stone heart and was about to call Gong Yimo out when he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. This feeling was too sudden. He did not immediately think of Shui Lian's direction. He only frowned and continued to call Gong Yimo forward. The enemy had the advantage in numbers, but as long as the leaders cared about Gong Yimo, he could use Gong Yimo to break through. Chapter 750. Gong Yimo was very unwilling to be controlled by someone, but this person could make her feel pain, so she could only bear with it and walk out unwillingly. Her shoes were thrown away somewhere, and her clothes were tattered. She stood barefoot on the ground, her black hair flying in the wind. The moment she appeared, a murderous aura rushed towards them. Her eyes were red, but she did not lose her rationality like those who were controlled. So from this point, Gong Yimo's guess was right. She was now the king of goo poison, but she was not complete. To be complete, she still needed one more thing, the stone heart. Good child. I know you can control those poison people too. Shui did not dare to get too close to her, because the murderous aura on her body was too frightening. But his eyes swept over her body in satisfaction. The scars became more and more hideous, as if they were about to split open. Go. Take some people and kill the leaders of the other party. When Gong Yimo heard this, she did not move, because she did not want to kill the people he mentioned. Seeing that she did not move, Shui sneered, and directly ordered the goo poison to drill into her heart. That inhuman pain made Gong Yimo's eyes reveal a human-like fear. She bared her teeth at Shui. But in the next second she rolled on the ground in pain. Shui saw that she had tasted pain, then slowly listened to her and said coldly. If you don't want to do it again, then go and kill them. I know you know what I mean. The way he pinched the stone heart was so hateful. Gong Yimo lay on the ground, her scarlet pupils constricting. Finally, she rushed out. After she went out, she let out a long cry. Those poison people seemed to have been stimulated in an instant, and their strength became stronger. Furthermore, after the voice transmission bird died, the scattered poison people seemed to have found their backbone, and order was restored once again. The sudden turn of events caused the Allied forces to be flustered. And a figure jumped onto the high cliff, roaring angrily at the people below. Seeing her, everyone panicked. Longqing Wuji was stunned for a moment, because Gong Yimo's scarlet eyes were aimed straight at him. Don't panic. Continue, kill them. Longqing Wuji ordered and pulled out his sword. Gong Yimo locked onto him and jumped down from above to grab him. But at this moment, a wave of arrows suddenly came from the side. She twisted her body to avoid it and suddenly jumped onto a tree. Kim Yun ordered them to stop, and Longqing Wuji cupped his fists towards him. Thank you for saving me. Kim Yun was on high alert. Now is not the time to be thankful. Be careful, she's here again. Shui watched all of this from the shadows. Countless people were fighting for him. Countless people had lost their lives because of him. This feeling was too good. It was as if he was not the child of a slave, and was not bullied because he was not a pure Snow clan member. He was the king, the fully deserving ruler of the world. But at this time, his heart ached again. This was definitely not an illusion. But why was he in pain? Could it be? At that moment, Shui's eyes widened in horror. Only then did he realize what he had missed. What are you doing? The old man finally realized that something was wrong with Shui Lian. She was actually standing beside his medicine furnace. Shui Lian's expression was cold. You said that if I jumped down, I would definitely die. Would you be willing to refine me into medicine? After all, you have no other choice. The old man was frightened. What are you doing? Your husband is not dead yet. Are you trying to kill him? Ha 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 ha. Shui Lian laughed when she heard this. Her face was charming, and her smile was even more beautiful. But at this moment, there was endless madness in her beauty. Yes. I want him to die. I want him to die. The old man sucked in a breath of cold air. Shui Lian took another step towards the medicine furnace. If you want to live, you have to refine me into medicine. When the time comes, you can give the medicine to the regent of Daiyu State. He will naturally spare your life. You have no other choice, she smiled and spoke calmly and cruelly. The old man opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not know what to say. Looking at the boiling medicine in the medicine furnace, Shui Lian's eyes flashed with madness. If everything was fake, then let it all end. She did not want to live for a moment longer. It was too disgusting, too disgusting. It's a pity that I can't watch your child be born. As she thought about this, she closed her eyes and jumped down. The fire under the medicine furnace instantly rose. The moment Gong Dai rushed over, he saw her jump down. His breathing stagnated, and he felt a little regretful. Actually, he wanted to know what else she wanted to say to the royal sister so that the royal sister would not be so sad. As soon as Shui Lian jumped down, the lid above the medicine furnace also fell down with a bang. In the midst of the commotion, the old man suddenly saw Gong Dai appear here, and his heart trembled. Was this person here to kill him? Gong Dai looked at the medicine furnace for a long time, then slowly looked at the old man. His thin lips moved. Give me the antidote, or die. The moment Shui Lian jumped down, Shui Yi felt a sharp pain in his heart. Finally, his chest swelled, and a golden moth came out of his body. Of course, he knew what it was. In his shock, Shui Yi only had time to spit out a mouthful of blood. Then, he watched as the Goo King flew out of his body and was caught by a man in red who had suddenly appeared. Si Wuyan shook the bottle somewhat proudly. It was not in vain that he had been looking for Shui Yi from the start. After finding him, he had been hiding here all this time. Otherwise, the Goo King would have escaped. At the same time, Lo Qi also appeared. He led people to protect Si Wuyan. After all, he also knew that the Goo King in Si Wuyan's hands was the key to saving the princess. This way, as long as the prince brought back the antidote, the princess would not have to take the risk of taking the stone core, nor would she have to risk breaking through to the 9th stage of the transformative state. Everything depended on the princess's safety. After Shui Yi spat out blood, he covered his wound and suddenly screamed. Lian, There was no mistake, because Lian, was about to die. Only when she was in danger would the Goo King break out of her body to save her. Lian, Lian, His eyes were red. For a moment, he did not know what he had lost. On the other side, after several sneak attacks by Gong Yimo, Longqing Wuji was already seriously injured. If not for the fact that Gong Yimo still had a trace of wisdom and did not kill him, he would have been a corpse long ago. Gong Yimo! Shui Yi suddenly screamed as he pinched the stone core. That sorrowful cry instantly made everyone present ready for battle. Si Wuyan had a bad feeling and said to Lo Qi, he's calling for Gong Yimo. Let's go first, before Gong Yimo kills us. Lo Qi nodded. The Goo King was more important. In the distance, Gong Yimo heard the call and frowned, but still ran in Shui Ye's direction. Longqing Wuji and Kim Yun both sighed in relief. They had finally escaped with their lives. Shui Ye's eyes were filled with madness. He stood up, drew his sword, and killed all the people around him who were protecting him. If they were not useless, how could Si Wuyan have caught the Goo King? Chapter 751. But even killing people could not quell his grief and anger. Perhaps Shui Lian was not dead yet. Perhaps the other party was just trying to force the Goo King out of his body. He forced himself to calm down. Then, when he saw Gong Yimo, he ordered her to go back and save Shui Lian. Gong Yimo stared at him with her red eyes, as if asking, what if she died? This knowledge made Shui Ye's heart ache. If Lian dies. Shui Yi suddenly sat down on the stone chair as if all his strength had been sucked out of him. His eyes were twisted with pain and madness. He ordered through gritted teeth. If Shui Lian dies, kill the person who killed her. Tear him into pieces. Tear him into pieces. Gong Yimo saw that his emotions were unstable and immediately left. She knew who Shui Lian was and what she looked like, but there was no emotion in her eyes, only frustration and anger. She wanted the red thing in his hand. She felt that she was missing something, and only that could fill it. With a loud bang, the entire pharmacy exploded. In the chaos, Gong Dai could clearly see that there was a white pill in the thick liquid that splattered everywhere. The old man was injured by the explosion. He stared at the pill, knowing that it was the antidote. Gong Dai sucked the pill in his hand, his heart thumping. With it, the royal sister did not have to worry about these messy poisons anymore. You promised not to kill me. You have to remember. The old man added worriedly. Before Gong Dai could speak, the old man was pierced from the back. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He never thought that he would die at the hands of the beast that he had created. Gong Yimo smelled that Shui Lian's scent had dissipated here, but she was not here, which meant that she was dead. And there were only two people here. They were the people who had killed Shui Lian. So, she did not hesitate. She killed one of them, then looked at the other. She did not forget Shui Ye's crazy eyes. It seemed that she had to kill, or he would torture her to death. The moment Gong Dai saw Gong Yimo, his breathing stopped. Especially when he saw her red eyes, he felt even more heartache. If he had protected her back then, she would not have lost her memory, and she would not have been taken advantage of. Now, Gong Dai realized that he was not a good husband. The antidote was in his hands, but he could not let royal sister take it now, because he was not sure if Si Wuyan had caught the Goo King. If Si Wuyan did not and he let royal sister regain her consciousness, what if Shui Yi realized that he had lost his advantage and royal sister? So when Gong Emo rushed over, Gong Ju blindly dodged. He took Gong Emo and ran back. His hatred for Shui Yi reached its peak. Whoever dared to treat royal sister like this, he would definitely die a horrible death. Gong Yimo saw him run and chased after him, but Gong Dai was still stronger than her. She could not catch up, which made her even angrier. On the other side, because Gong Emo was not present, the coalition forces were suppressing the poisoned soldiers. Coupled with the fact that the strength of the poisoned soldiers was exhausted, many of them fell to the ground in the end. This one-sided suppression made Shui Yi deeply understand the meaning of despair. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was his wife. Was his Lian still alive? If she was dead. If she was dead, the past repeated itself in front of his eyes. Every day, when he wore Fu Ye's mask, he felt very angry, helpless, and repressed. Now that he thought about it, was he really that repressed? Could he really not live with the mask for the rest of his life? Shui questioned himself again and again. Back then, he felt that he could not breathe while wearing the mask. But was it really that uncomfortable? Wasn't the fake happiness real happiness? He suddenly remembered that Shui Lian had asked him before, between Zhang Shan and her, who would he choose? He said he wanted both. She asked, what if he could only choose one? Shui clutched his pierced chest. If he could only choose one, what could compare to supreme power and status? Was there really nothing that could compare to it? No, he could not stay here any longer. He wanted to kill. He wanted to kill those people. With this thought, Shui seemed to wake up from a dream and chased after Si Wuyan. At this moment, Gong Dai stopped Si Wuyan. Seeing that Gong Dai had come, Si Wuyan was overjoyed. Did you get it? Gong Dai nodded. Si Wuyan took out the bottle in his hand. I got it too. As long as someone who is good at using goo plays the flute, the Goo King will summon the goo worm in Gong Yimo's body. At that time, the other party will be dead. Gong Dai frowned. It's so troublesome. Si Wuyan sighed. There's no other way. I've never learned how to control goo worms. But now that Shui doesn't have the Goo King, he won't dare to do anything to Gong Yimo, unless he wants to die. But this was what Gong Dai was worried about. He was afraid that Shui would want to die together with them. His royal sister would also be hurt. Did he still need the stone heart? At this moment, Gong Yimo had already arrived. She charged at Gong Dai fiercely. She did not know that this was her lover. But in the next second, as if she had heard a call, she suddenly retreated. Gong Dai's hand, which had been clamping down on her, missed. Then, he saw Shui run out of the forest, covered in blood. He gripped the stone heart tightly. Gong Yimo was his last hope. Seeing that Gong Yimo did not bring anyone back, Shui's pupil shrank. He looked at Gong Dai as if he wanted to eat him up. It was you who killed her. She's your wife's mother. You actually killed her. Seeing Shui, Gong Dai's hatred was no less than his. He took out the white pill in his hand and sneered. Royal sister is your daughter. You're worse than a beast. Why can't I refine your wife into an antidote? Gong Dai's words made Shui spit out another mouthful of blood. He stared at the pill in Gong Dai's hand. Lian was dead. She had been refined into an antidote. Thinking of this, he could not help but spit out more blood. His eyes were filled with regret that he did not even realize. Lian. Seeing his pain, Gong Dai's lips curled into a cold smile. Si Wuyan felt even more satisfied. This person was full of schemes and tricks. Now, he was finally suffering the consequences of his own actions. Gong Dai said mockingly, you still don't know, right? She committed suicide. She jumped into the furnace herself. Because of a husband like you, she's living a life worse than death. She feels disgusted all the time. Shut up. Shut up. Shui wanted to swing his sword at him like a madman, but Gong Dai squeezed the pill tightly. If you take another step forward, I'll crush it. At that time, you will be able to watch with your own eyes as the last remnant of the snow lotus is destroyed. Shui roared endlessly. He hated it. He was in pain. But he regretted it even more. In the end, he knelt down with a thud. Chapter 752. Everyone was shocked. Gong Dai watched coldly as Shui crawled towards him. His eyes flickered with uneasiness. It was obvious that he had fallen into chaos. Give her back to me. I beg you, can you give her back to me? It was as if as long as Gong Dai gave him the elixir, Shui Lian would come back to life. Gong Dai looked at the person crawling to his feet. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. I can give her back to you, but you have to use the stone heart in exchange. Shui Ye's eyes lit up when he heard that. He hurriedly took out the stone heart. Gong Dai smiled gently and reached out to take it. However, at that moment, the originally gloomy sky suddenly exploded with a sudden clap of thunder. Winter's thunder was an ominous sign. At that moment, all the uneasiness, fear, and regret in Shui Ye's eyes disappeared. Shui Lian was already dead. No matter what he did, she would not come back to life. After a moment of despair, Shui Yi suddenly raised his head and looked at Gong Dai. Gong Yimo, kill him. Gong Dai narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated. However, Gong Yimo had already rushed over. Although Gong Dai was more powerful than Gong Yimo, Gong Dai was afraid of hurting her and held back. On the other hand, Gong Yimo was ruthless. At that moment, Shui Yi slowly crawled up from the ground and approached Si Wuyan with a sinister smile. I haven't lost yet. I haven't lost yet. Give the Goo King back to me. Give the Goo King back to me. Lo Qi and the rest immediately stepped forward to protect Si Wuyan. Si Wuyan kept retreating. On the other side, Gong Dai and Gong Yimo had already exchanged hundreds of blows. Gong Dai tried to stuff the antidote into Gong Yimo's mouth several times but to no avail. This was probably the only antidote in the world. If Gong Yimo had any sense, she would not have let him feed it to her. She would have used it to duplicate the antidote. However, Gong Dai did not care about that. Those people were dead. Their lives added together could not even compare to a single strand of Gong Yimo's hair. Royal sister. Wake up. Gong Dai used his internal energy to suppress her, forcing her to look into his eyes. However, Gong Yimo did not even look at him. Instead, she used all her strength to break free. Seeing that she did not recognize him at all, Gong Dai's eyes darkened, and Gong Yimo once again struggled free, grabbing towards him. That sharp killing intent was as if he was her enemy. Gong Dai's heart ached for a moment before his eyes focused. He tilted his head slightly, only avoiding his vitals. Finally, he found a chance to stuff the antidote into her mouth. Then, he lifted her chin and forced her to swallow it. But it was precisely this movement of his hand. Gong Yimo had left 3 deep bloodstains on his face, ruining the face that was blessed by the heavens and earth. As the antidote entered her mouth, Gong Yimo felt extremely uncomfortable. As for Gong Dai, he endured the pain on his face and hugged her, soothing the raging vital energy in her body over and over again. It's all right now. It's all right now. Royal sister, it's all right now. Gong Dai hugged her tightly. Hearing her sobs, he frowned deeply. At the same time, a trace of determination flashed across his eyes. I won't let you get hurt again, unless I die. Unfortunately, Gong Yimo, who was in pain, did not hear him. Seeing that Gong Yimo had taken the antidote, Shui Yi killed a few people but still did not manage to snatch the Goo King. At the end of his rope, he suddenly ate the stone heart. Si Wuyan was shocked. Gong Dai heard the sound and looked over, only to see that Shui Ye's entire body had turned blood red. His face had been swollen out of shape by some unknown force. He had turned into a monster. He hurriedly handed Gong Yimo to Lo Qi, then stabbed Shui Yi with his sword. Shui Yi suddenly raised his head and glanced at Gong Dai. His eyes were bloodshot and his body was swollen, but he could still smile at a time like this. Gong Dai pulled out his sword, and the wound healed instantly. He was shocked and quickly retreated, just in time to avoid the other party's thunderous attack. You guys take Royal Sister and leave first. Gong Dai turned the sword in his hand, ready to attack. He's no longer human. When Si Wuyen heard this, he hurriedly carried the unconscious Gong Yimo and ran away. Shui wanted to chase after them, but was stopped by Gong Dai. Your opponent is me. After being stopped, Shui's body swelled due to anger. He did not say a word and directly charged at Gong Dai like a bull. The sky darkened, the wind and clouds changed color, and it actually started to snow. Shui's strength had increased tremendously, and his movements were very agile. All the injuries that landed on his body healed instantly. Gong Dai's expression froze, and his eyes fell on his neck. He wanted to see if he could grow another one without a head. At this moment, Gong Yimo woke up. Where was she? Could it be that Gong Dai had snatched the stone heart and fed it to her? Then, she regained her consciousness. When Si Wuyen saw that she had woken up, he asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" Gong Yimo suddenly had a headache. What had just happened flashed through her mind like a movie. Gong Yimo was shocked. She had not expected that she had hurt Gong Dai. No. Gong Dai was in danger now. Just as Gong Dai was about to cut off Shui's head, he suddenly laughed maliciously. If you kill me, Gong Yimo will die too. Hearing this, Gong Dai quickly turned the sword in his hand. He only managed to cut Shui's chest, but the wound immediately healed. Shui approached Gong Dai step by step. If you dare to cut me again, I'll make Gong Yimo suffer a heart-wrenching pain. Even if she can take it, I don't know if the child can take it when the pain reaches its limit. Blood flowed down Gong Dai's face. That was the wound that Gong Yimo had left behind. It made half of his face look like an immortal, and the other half like a devil. You better not resist. Shui walked over step by step. If you dare to resist, I'll make Gong Yimo suffer a fate worse than death. As he spoke, he swung his palm at Gong Dai. But in the next second, his heart was pierced from the back. Shui's hand stopped in midair, and his eyes flashed with malevolence. Gong Mo. Gong Yimo was behind him, panting slightly. Don't you have any shame? You killed Mother, and you still have the face to continue living. Shouldn't you go to the underworld and apologize? Gong Yimo's words made Shui's pupil shrink. Then he roared and used his internal energy to push Gong Yimo away. Royal Sister. Gong Dai caught Gong Yimo. You shouldn't have come back. Gong Yimo touched his injured face, her heart aching. Do you think I can escape if I don't come back? As she spoke, her gaze fell on Shui. Today, either he dies, or I die. Shui laughed loudly. I'll let you die here together, as a pair of ghost mandarin ducks. As he spoke, he attacked again. Gong Dai hurriedly fought back. He was stronger than Shui, but he was worried about the royal sister. He frowned deeply, not knowing what to do. Gong Yimo had already stood up. Kill him. Take out the stone heart. With the stone heart, I won't die. Hearing this, Gong Dai's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He cut off one of his opponent's hands. His opponent's hand did not grow back, but the cut was no longer bleeding. Shui smiled maliciously at Gong Yimo. If you want the stone heart, you have to be alive to take it. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.